Good morning and welcome. Would the Committee on Zoning please come to order? Before we begin, let me apologize to the members of the Zoning Committee and the general public at large and those affected parties who will be testifying. We had a little bit glitch, but it is okay at this point. At this time, I would like to welcome committee members Cordero, Dos Santos Tan, Kia Aina, and Wire. Although remote oral testimony is being permitted, this is a regular in-person meeting and not a remote meeting by interactive conference technology under Hawaii Revised Section 92-3.7. Therefore, the meeting will continue notwithstanding the loss of audiovisual communication with remote testifiers or loss of the public broadcast of the meeting. Members of the public will be allowed to provide oral testimony on all items on the agenda in two ways: remotely and in person in the council chamber. Oral testimony will be allowed when each agenda item is taken up in the following order. First, the remote testimony, and second, the in-person testimony in the council chamber. Before testifying, each person shall state their full name and the agenda item they are testifying on. Each speaker may not have anyone else read their statement and is limited to a 1-minute presentation per item. All persons who have registered to testify remotely by video conference or phone will be called upon first. When your name is called, please monitor your screen and activate your audio feed when prompted. The following are some friendly reminders and tips. Video conference from a quiet location if possible. If you are watching the proceedings on Olelo, please mute your device at the time you are called to testify. When the timer on the screen reaches 0, please conclude your remarks promptly. For those who are joining us by telephone only, please press *9 to indicate your desire to speak. I will identify you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. When your number is called, please press *6 to unmute yourself when prompted. Once all of the remote testifiers have testified, I will then proceed on to in-person testimony in the council chamber. Persons who have not registered will be given an opportunity to speak following the oral testimonies of the registered speakers. Written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and phone number, will be available to the public as described on the posted agenda. As a courtesy, please turn off all cell phones. For those who will be providing oral testimony on Bill 50 of 2023, Committee Draft 1, Bill 51 of 2023, Committee Draft 1, and Bill 52 of 2023, or Bill 53, 2023, please note that your testimony will be limited to comments on the extension of time only. Comments will be requested for the extension of these 4 measures that is pending before this committee. So members, moving on to taking up agenda items number 1, 2, 3, and 4 together, and each item will be for an extension of time only. Item 1, Bill 50, 2023, Committee Draft 1. This bill expands the Transit-Oriented Development, TOD, Special District to include 1 additional Honolulu Rail Transit Project Station area and to incorporate land use standards and guidelines for that area based on recommendations in the Halava Area TOD Plan. TOD, once more for the general public, is the Transit-Oriented Development. Okay. Members, for your information, a written request for a 60-day extension of time from the Department of Planning and Permitting is available online as Departmental Communication 728 of 2023. For the general public, the extension of the 60-day is from the Department of Planning and Permitting is available online as Departmental Communication 728 of 2023. Item number 2, Bill 51 of 2023, Committee Draft 1. This bill rezones land situated near the Kamehameha Highway and the Salt Lake Boulevard intersection, which is Halawa Aloha Stadium Rail Station area in Halawa, Oahu, from the A1 low density apartment, A2 medium density apartment, B1 neighborhood business, B2 community business, F1 military and federal preservation, and R5 residential districts to the A1 low density apartment, A2 the medium density apartment, the AMX2, which is mixed use, B1 neighborhood business, B2 community business, BMX3 community business mixed use, F1 once more is the military and federal preservation, and P2 general preservation districts. Members, once more, for your information, a written request for a 60-day extension of time from the Department of Planning and Permitting is available online as Departmental Communication 729 of 2023. Item number 3, Bill 52 of 2023. This bill provides for a more effective deterrent by increasing the penalty amount for developers that violate the standards and requirements for large detached dwellings by supplying incorrect information on building permit plans or by converting dwellings to accommodate multifamily uses during construction or post-construction. Once more, members, for your information, a written request for a 60-day extension of time from the Department of Planning and Permitting is available online as Departmental Communication 730 of 2023. Item 4, Bill 53. This bill once more addresses the standards and requirements for bed and breakfast homes and transient vacation units. Members, for your information, once more, a written request for a 60-day extension of time from the Department of Planning and Permitting is available online as Departmental Communication 731 of 2023. At this time, we have Ms. Dawn Takeuchi Apuna, the Director of the Department of Planning and Permitting, to address the concerns of the extension for Bill 50, 51, 52, and Bill 53. Director Apuna.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Donna Puna, DPP. We, ask for these extensions so that to give the council and the committee sufficient time to review these 4 bills that amend the LUO and are limited by 90 days within which to for the council to review. So additional time is appreciated.
Thank you. Any questions for the director at this point for support of the extension? Okay, for further deliberation. If there is no questions, may we proceed on with the remote testimony on Bill 50. Is there anyone for Bill 50? Okay, Bill 51. Bill 52 and Bill 53 of 2023. Madam Clerk, do we have any remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Okay. At this time, let's move to the in-person testimony. We will now proceed with in-person testimony. Madam Clerk, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Okay. Members, at this point, we are in discussion on all 4 measures that is before us, and these 4 measures are basically requesting an extension of time for more deliberation. Okay. If not, the chair notes that the time needed to consider Bill 50, 2023, Committee Draft 1, may exceed the current deadline for council action. The chair therefore recommends that the bill be granted a 60-day extension of time pursuant to the request from the Department of Planning and Permitting in Departmental Communication 728 of 2023. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Moving on to Bill 51, the chair recognizes that the time needed to consider Bill 51 of 2023, Committee Draft 1, may exceed the current deadline for council action. The chair therefore recommends that the bill be granted a 60-day extension of time pursuant to the request from the Department of Planning and Permitting in Departmental Communication of 729 of 2023. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. The 60-day extension. Next, the chair notes that the time needed to consider Bill 52 of 2023 may exceed the current deadline for council action. The chair therefore recommends that the bill be granted a 60-day extension of time pursuant to the request from the Department of Planning and Permitting in Departmental Communication 730 of 2023. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. A 60-day extension for Bill 52. And moving on to Bill 53 of 2023, the chair notes that the time needed to consider Bill 53 of 2023 may exceed the current deadline for council action. The chair therefore recommends that the bill be granted a 60-day extension of time pursuant to the request from the Department of Planning and Permitting in the Departmental Communication 731 of 2023. Members, are there any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Okay, let's move on for action. Member, moving to agenda item number 5. Resolution 23-205. This resolution. What? Okay, excuse me. It's resolution 23 of this year, and its number is 206 instead of 205. I stand corrected, it's 206. This resolution grants a special management area major permit to allow Mr. Peter Vincent Architects on behalf of the Jennifer Rainin 2007 Trust to allow for the new construction of a single-family detached dwelling, accessory dwelling unit, driveway, a 3-car garage, swimming pool, and related site improvements on the approximately 38,310 square foot shoreline lot, zoned as a R10 residential district located at 10 Kamani Kai Place in Kailua and identified as tax map key 4-3-015:005 period. Members, we have posted to the agenda a proposed committee draft 1 version of the resolution. For your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. At this point in time, the draft is by Council Member Kia Aina. Do you have comments on the committee draft 1? Please.
Thank you, Chair. I actually didn't have comments on your committee draft, but I actually had other recommendations. Can I be allowed to
Yes.
provide
please proceed.
comment? First of all, thank you for the applicant's representatives for meeting with me a couple of months ago. Members, as you know, all of Kailua's sand berms were used for burials, and this property is an area rich in iwi kupuna. After a lot of thought and discussion with Malama kupuna practitioners from the area, I would like to propose amendments to conditions C, D, and E as follows. Modify condition C to require the applicant to submit to SHPD an updated archaeological inventory survey that includes the results of subsurface testing conducted in areas where excavation work will occur. Modify condition D to require that the required archaeological monitoring plan, which would require an on-site presence of a licensed archaeologist during excavation work, and also require establishment of a temporary curation unit on the project site if iwi kupuna are disinterred, consideration of project redesign or relocation to allow any discovered iwi kupuna to be buried in place. If iwi kupuna are discovered, consultation shall take place as required by state law on treatment of the iwi kupuna and establishment of a reinterment site on the project site in the event that iwi kupuna are discovered and it is determined that burial in place is not recommended. Lastly, modify condition E to require that excavation work be conducted with a specially fitted flat blade, not the standard toothed blade, on the excavator bucket, which must be operated in a series of shallow scrapes instead of deep scoops. I believe that these additional conditions are very reasonable in light of the risks, and other than the condition related to the excavation method, none of these conditions will require additional work unless iwi kupuna are in fact discovered.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Kiaina. At this point in time, joining us now in the council chamber, we have Mr. Peter Vincent and Muriel Turin from Peter Vincent Architects to give a brief presentation on the project for your information. And for the general public at large, the presentation is available online as Miscellaneous Communication 564 of 2023. Mr. Vincent.
Aloha, good morning. My name is Peter Vincent with Peter Vincent Architects. As mentioned, I'll provide a brief overview of the proposed project and be happy to answer any questions you may have. It's a 38,310 square foot, currently vacant property on Kailua Beach. Next, please. This is a map of the location on Oahu and Kailua Beach, just on the Waimanalo side of Kalama Beach Park. Okay. The project is located in the special management area. Next. It's in flood zone X, so not prone to flooding, and there's no set base flood elevation established by FEMA. Next. It is in a tsunami evacuation zone. Next. And the project site is not within the 3.2 foot 70-year projection sea level rise according to the Hawaii sea level rise maps. Next. This map indicates the shoreline certification, which is Makai of the property boundaries. You can see the site is accessed. That's basically a flag lot that was established when larger parcels were previously subdivided. Next. This is a topography of the site, which shows there's kind of a large bowl in the center of the site where it's lower. And there's a drainage easement on along the Waimanalo side of the site, leading in the Mauka-Makai direction, which drains a portion of Kamanikai Place toward the ocean. Next. Some information about the site, which I can review in more detail if necessary. Next. This is our proposed site plan showing landscape. The site is an L-shaped residence. There's an ADU on the back Mauka side of the property as well. It's 4 bedrooms, 5.5 baths. The design is meant to be a series of connected pavilions in order to keep the massing small rather than a larger massing. And it's meant to be open in the Mauka-Makai direction. And the main pavilion for living space is loosely related to traditional Hawaiian canoe hale. We are a minimum of 60 foot back from the certified shoreline. Some of the project is further back than the 60 feet, and no work will occur within the shoreline setback. Next. It's a landscape plan showing proposed landscape. There'd be typical Hawaii oceanfront landscape on the Makai side, lawn, naupaka, coconuts. There are 2 existing beach heliotrope trees which will remain. And then a more lush landscape on the Mauka side of the property where it's more buffered from the onshore trade winds. Next. So aerial view of the project, you can see the massing of the project where it's broken into pavilions, creating smaller massing. On the lower right is the garage, which is a flat roof element to enable photovoltaic panels. We're proposing that the project generate as much electricity as needed for the project to run, and also on the ADU. And then the rest of the house itself will have traditional slope hip roofs. Next. This is a Mackay view of the project from Kailua Beach, as you would see. Again, proposing to retain the naupaka that exists and the beach heliotrope trees that you see on the left. So it has a very discrete elevation from the beach side. And again, it's the sort of varied nature of the roof line will enhance the Mackay view corridor. Next. These are the materials proposed for the exterior, corrugated metal, aluminum roofing in a copper verdigris color. And the intent here is that it have the resemblance of a more traditional, what might be termed toe-tongue roofing in plantation-style architecture. Next. And then walls will be a series of some light stone, natural stone, as well as some bleached wood siding. So very natural earth tone materials in general for the project. Next. That's it. Okay, yeah, that's it. And happy to answer any questions. I do have a couple comments to Councilmember Kia Aina's proposed amendments.
Please proceed.
Okay. So we don't take objection to Councilmember Kia Aina's proposed amendments regarding the archaeology. However, we do find it somewhat duplicative with SHPT's process, which is already in place. I did speak with our archaeologist yesterday evening about the proposed amendments, and that's Nick Beluso with ASM affiliates. And there was one question about the establishment of a temporary curation unit, which I guess Nick's comment was, is that what the community wants? Because he's been in close contact with De Silva Ohana, and they, I guess what he told me is that their preference is that if any iwi kupuna are found, that the first preference would be that they remain in place. If they are reinterred, then there would be discussion amongst the burial council and the community as to the best course of action, and that may or may not be a temporary curation unit. His other comment was that he's never heard of a temporary curation unit being required for a residential project. We're not necessarily opposed to it, but we would want to operate in cooperation with the community.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Vincent.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the members in regards to the draft?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry,
Councilmember
I
Kia.
have some comments, and then also I have a question. So just as a recap for my colleagues, in the vicinity of Kamani Kai Place, where this project is located, it is rich in iwi kupuna, and I just want to let you know all of the recommendations I'm making is in concert with the Silvas. So the records of the practitioners indicate that more than 86 burials have been discovered on the grounds of St. Anthony's Church and School on Makawao Street, and 30 to 35 more have been found a block away at Ulupa. I also want to just share with my colleagues that, as you know, we have a 2-year City Kalapawai roundabout project, and already 4 iwi kupuna have been found. And so I did have a question with regard to your swimming pool. My recommendations, I believe, again, are reasonable in concert with the community. I know that there are those who believe there should be no more swimming pools in Kailua where there's a high likelihood of finding iwi kupuna. Having said that, I guess my question to you is that if iwi kupuna are discovered during excavation for the swimming pool, is your team prepared to look at alternatives to allow for burial in place? Number one, including moving the pool to a different location. Number two, building an above-ground pool. Number three, and lastly, abandoning the idea of a pool.
Would you like to respond, Mr. Vincent, please?
Yes, thank you. So as I mentioned in the beginning, the topography of the site, there's a large bowl in the center. And so the pool is roughly located at the low point of the site, and then we are elevating up so that we're meeting the grade around the perimeter of the site, and also to be cognizant of potential erosion and storm surge and that sort of thing in the future. Our client is handicapped in a wheelchair, and therefore it's important for us to create some level areas, both indoor and outdoor, without having stairs. We have no stairs on the property, so that's a big, important part of the project, as is hydrotherapy, i.e. the pool for her. And so we would certainly be willing to look at alternatives in the event that iwi kupuna are found. However, I think because the pool, it's a fairly shallow pool, what's being proposed, and there's very little excavation required for the pool in essence, because it's going in a low-lying area now, and then we're raising the grade several feet above that. And we are using, we did change our strategy for foundations, and rather than bringing in imported fill, we're using native fill from where there is some excavation on the site to use.
And do you believe that is the best location to have the least disturbance of iwi kupuna?
Yes, and as you know, being familiar with the windward side, putting the pool on the Mauka side is not really advisable because of the wind, and it's generally too cold. I haven't seen any pools on the windward side of most houses, and having designed dozens of homes along Kailua Beach in the past, I will say we've done dozens of homes on Kailua Beach and Lanikai, and knock on wood, never discovered iwi kupuna there. We have on other project sites around the island. We're very familiar with the process. So it's kind of limited in terms of where a pool can be because of our flag lot configuration. The access to the site is predetermined, and then it needs to be on the Mauka side of the house. It could be made smaller, it could be made shallower, so I think there are potential scenarios that could be developed should iwi kupuna be encountered during construction. I will say, again, just reiterating that an AIS was done, no bones were found on the property, and we all realize that doesn't mean that there may not be some encountered during construction, but we have certainly done our due diligence. And I think all the iwi kupuna that you've mentioned have been pretty far Mauka of the site. In this area, such as St. Anthony's Church across the street, because we've looked at our archaeologist has provided a map of where the iwi kupuna have been found historically.
Thank you. Thank you for answering my questions, and then I still stand by my recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hold on. Okay, Councilmember Tyler DeSantis-Tan.
Thank you. I was wondering if the applicant could explain the difference between an archaeological inventory survey, which Councilmember Kia'aina's amendments call for, and the archaeological monitoring plan, which I think your amendments speak of. This is just for sort of the public's edification, so we know exactly what's being asked for.
Sure. In retrospect, I should have asked our archaeologist to be here to answer. But basically, the AIS, Archaeological Inventory Study, is where they go out and they actually did trenching with an archaeologist on site. to where we are proposing excavation based on our site plan that you've seen. And they go out and they do trenching in kind of shallow trenches, doing a little bit at a time, and no burials were encountered during that process. The archaeological monitoring plan is a plan that is put in place. It's being reviewed with SHPD, State Historic Preservation Division, with our archaeologist, and that is the plan in place that really is somewhat duplicative of Councilmember Kia-Aina's comments, where if bones are found, then here's the process for what will take place.
So I guess the short version is the survey is done up front, and the plan is to deal with what happens during the construction phase. So they kind of work together.
That's correct.
Okay. And then I did have a question just to build upon the swimming pool portion. You know, you mentioned that the pool is at the low point of the site, and there's going to be work around the pool area so that it meets the grade, the existing grade. In Councilmember, or in Chair Say's proposal, he talks about the specific depth at which excavation will occur under the perimeter walls for both the single-family detached dwelling as well as the ADU. It doesn't mention the depth for the swimming pool. What is the depth of the excavation as currently planned for the swimming pool in relation to the existing grade?
It varies. I'd have to look specifically at our plans and section to answer accurately. It probably varies from 1 to 3 feet.
So it's not as if you're digging a whole new, 6 to 8 foot pool. It's rather, since it's at the low point, you only have to dig a little bit to make up that difference.
Correct.
Okay. That makes me feel a little bit better about the potential of finding EV kupuna, but of course, we do have to monitor the situation and deal with that appropriately. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further discussion for Mr. Vincent? Mr. Vincent, the chair has one question. In compliance with what the committee draft 1 requires, would you be open to just supporting that particular draft that we have before us as a committee draft?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, Councilmember Kia-Aina.
Council Chair, I actually thought that this bill was going to be considered later in the agenda. I understand that there are actually some concerns by DPP. I would like to call for a short recess before we move into discussions.
Oh, okay. Can we take up DPP also? We haven't taken up DPP after Mr. Vincent's.
Okay.
Or would that be?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. Would you stick around for further discussion? At this point in time,
Yes.
the Director of Department of Planning and Permitting, after we have just heard from the developer and applicant. Please proceed.
Thank you,
Director
Chair.
Acuna.
So
Yeah.
we are in support of the proposed CD1, your version. I think we recently received the proposed amendments by Councilmember Kia-Aina, and I think we're discussing, we don't want to create a duplicative requirements or burdens upon the applicant or DPP. But I have staff here who can clarify any questions there might be as far as the AIS or monitoring, et cetera.
Okay, why don't we do that? Let's have it as an open discussion, Councilmember Kia-Aina, or would you want the chair to call a recess?
I would prefer to call a recess and that we come back with the proposed modifications.
Okay,
Thank you.
recess subject to the call of the chair. Will the committee please come to order? After the recess, we're very fortunate to have someone from the Department of Planning and Permitting that has drafted a proposal that is a part of Councilmember Kia Aina's Committee Draft 1. So at this point in time, for the edification and education of the members and the general public, I'd like to call up DPP to make a presentation of a compromise that we have at this point. Please go ahead, Mike.
Michael Catt with DPP. So we support these amendments that were proposed. The first change was for condition C, item 1. It's just clarifying that the work that has been submitted to DPP needs to be submitted again once the consultation with SHPD has concluded. So they have done an AIS, and so when they have received that approval, they need to submit that again to DPP just so we have that determination. There were for condition D, there were no changes to items 2 through 4. For item D5, though, there was wording added that the excavation used the consultation with their licensed archaeologist. That way that if there is a necessary for them to be using a flat blade for excavation purposes, that the licensed archaeologist is the one making that determination, and that other kinds of construction activities, if they require a different attachment, they're allowed to do so. And then at the top of condition E, it is moving the reinterment site require the identification of a potential reinterment site on the project site in the event that EV Kupuna are discovered, and moving that so it outside of the monitoring plan, because the monitoring plan is something that SHPD is reviewing, and so DPP wouldn't want to impose a condition that is then requiring SHPD to send something to us to sign off when they're the ones that should be approving that. And so if we're wanting to ensure that the applicant is doing their due diligence and identifying potential reinterment sites, then they should be submitting that to DPP ahead of time so that we know that they are making those considerations. But I can answer any questions that the council may have.
Any questions for Mr. Katz? If not, for the edification of the general public, Mr. Katz, may I go and read the hard copy that we're doing the amendments on for all of the members and the audience? For section C, prior to the issuance of any construction permits or building permits for the project, the applicant shall, this is the changes that we have, to submit to the State Historic Preservation Division the results of the subsurface testing conducted in areas where excavation work will occur as set forth in condition HB, and then move on to D. The applicant, in consultation with SHPD, shall implement an archaeological monitoring plan during ground disturbing activity and project construction to ensure that archaeological and cultural resources are identified and treated properly. The archaeological monitoring plan must include, and these are the new language that we are incorporating, establishment of a temporary curation unit on the project site if iwi kupuna are disinterred. Consideration of project redesign or relocation to allow any discovered iwi kupuna to be buried in place. If the number 4, if the iwi kupuna are discovered, consultation must take place as required by state law on the treatment of the iwi kupuna. And finally, consult the licensed archaeologist whether excavation work should be conducted with a specially fitted flat blade, not the standard tooth blade, on the excavation bucket, which must be operated in a series of shallow scrapes instead of deep scoops. And finally, we require the identification of potential reinterment sites on the project site in the event that iwi kupuna are discovered, and it is determined that burial in place is not recommended and on-site reinterment is recommended. Is that correct, Michael Katz?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Any questions for the members of the committee? So this is the proposed draft that Councilmember Kiaina has submitted for us for our consideration. Thank you very much. If there are no further questions. At this point in time, we can now proceed with the remote testimony. Clerks, do we have any remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you very much. At this point in time, in-person testimony, we'll now proceed with in-person testimony. Clerk, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. If there is anyone else in the council chambers who would like to testify, please come forward to the testifier podium and state your name for the record. Is there anyone? Mr. Manago, please.
James K. Manaku Sr. You know, Mr. Chair, I'm really concerned about the hori, the animals that are the hori bat and the seals. Is there anything being done about the protection of them? Because they're building so many things on top of these properties. What protection is there for them? Yeah.
Okay. Oh, please. Turn it on.
I'm sorry. As you know, they're protected species, and I only see that, I know we're protecting the iwi kupuna, which is very good. But as you know, these invasive these species are being, they're not being protected. Why is that? Yeah, they're, as you notice, if you look into our invasive, if you look into our what we have left in what we have, we're losing all of our native species, and would be nice to see if somehow we can save the little bit that we have.
Okay.
Yeah, so please take that into consideration, Calvin.
Okay, Mr. Manaco.
Because the horrid bats are disappearing. So
Yes.
whatever little bit we have, it would be nice if we can keep them. Thank you.
No, thank you very much for that question. If you look on Resolution 23-206, on page 3 of the resolution, there is a section as far as protecting our hoary bats.
Yeah, but I don't see anything on top. I don't see anything on top here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else? Please, come on up. Press the button.
I say, well, okay, aloha. Aloha, my name is Kelvin Hulehe, Konahiki, Kamuali bloodline. But anyway, our heritage, our culture, our lifestyle was, to me, taken away by this different entity, this illegal government, because I feel, and I see the maps from way back, they didn't have no dwellings on the shoreline, and I'm learning now, that was our food source area, so shouldn't be any dwellings or any kind of obstacle interrupting our gathering, our cow, our food, our sustainability, our lifestyle, our culture. So it was what it was, and it was illegally taken away. So I just want to say that. Thank you. Aloha.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hulehe. Okay, please proceed.
Konahiki. Any redevelopment
Young
or
man,
rezoning
young man, testifier.
is illegal.
No, why don't you state your name first? for the general public and for the members of the council.
Konahiki. Any development is illegal in Hawaii only because the lands have allodial title to it. Now, in this case, if it's rural pattern land, it's even more allodial title. You folks should look into the allodial title. It is private property forever. And it was declared by Kamehameha III. Now, all the developments that's happening is all illegal. You folks just passing it. I. This whole thing is all shibai. Aloha.
Thank you very much for your comments. Is there anyone else? If not, members, we are in discussion in regards to Resolution 23-206, CD1. Okay. At this point in time, if there is no further discussion, the chair would like to recommend that Resolution 23-206 be amended to the posted Committee Draft 1 as further amended as proposed by Councilmember Kia Aina in the rider, the second rider that was distributed that amended the resolution's archaeological related conditions, and we made miscellaneous, technical, and non-substantive amendments. Is there any discussion? Objections or reservations? Hearing none, the resolution has been amended to a Committee Draft 1. At this point in time, the chair then recommends that Resolution 23-206, Committee Draft 1, be reported out for adoption. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Thank you very much. Let's moving on to agenda item number 6, Resolution 23-238. This resolution grants a special management area major permit to the City Department of Design and Construction to allow for the phased improvements of the Waikiki Shell, including the replacement of a sign structure, replacement of an existing open-air concession, modifications to the orchestra pit area and pool area, expansion of the fixed seating area, replacement of existing seating and sound bunker, and installation of a new sound baffle and pedestrian covering at the rear of the fixed seating area on approximately 6 acres of land encompassing the Waikiki Shell, zoned as P2 or Preservation, General Preservation District, located at 2805 Montserrat Avenue in Waikiki and identified as a portion of tax map key 3-1-043:001 and 018. Members, we have posted to agenda a proposed Committee Draft 1 version of the resolution, and for your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. At this time, I would like to propose a technical verbal amendment to the posted Committee Draft 1 version of the resolution. In the fourth whereas clause, replace the reference of revised ordinance of Honolulu of 25-3.2 with a reference to revised ordinance of Honolulu 25-410. That's the technical amendment. Okay, let's proceed on. Joining us in the council chamber, we have Mr. Isaiah Sato for RM Towel Corporation to give a brief presentation of the project on behalf of the City and County of Honolulu. And for your information, the presentation is available online as Miscellaneous Communication 546 of 2023. Mr. Sato.
Thank you, Zoning Chair Say and members of the Zoning Committee, as well as Councilmember Tupola. Thank you for joining us today. So my name is Isaiah Sato, and I work at RM Towel Corporation. We're the agent for DES and DDC for this project. In the chambers today, we have the director and the deputy director of DES available, as well as the project manager from DDC. available for any questions. Just right off the bat, I want to say that we do support the CD1, and we also support the technical changes to the CD1 presented today. Today, I'm going to be talking about the Tom Moffett Waikiki Shell improvements. The project site is located right outside of Waikiki, kind of between the Honolulu Zoo and Kapiolani Park there. The project site is accessed off driveways on Montserrat Avenue, which leads to the Waikiki Shell parking lot there. The project site is around 6 acres. Flood zone is a mix of AE and X. We are within the SMA, which is why we're here today, and we're also within the Diamond Head Special District. I also wanted to note that all of the improvements presented today fall within the Waikiki Shell area, and they don't extend beyond the Shell premises there. This next slide is a quick site plan of the Shell itself. And the Shell, of course, is a venue for outdoor concerts and other large events. The operations and maintenance of the Shell are managed by the City Department of Enterprise Services. And the Shell offers a mix of permanent fixed seats, flexible portable seats, and open lawn areas. So in this map, the permanent seats are in yellow. The flexible fixed seats, which is portable chairs, is in green, and the lawn seating is in blue. And a total seats of around 8,600 seats there. This next slide shows a conceptual plan of all of the improvements that we have. So we have 7 areas of improvements labeled A through G. Starting with A in the top left, we have a replacement of a sign structure at the west public entry. Moving up at item B, there is an existing open air food concession that we'll be replacing. In C, there's modification to the orchestra pit and apron area to better accommodate seating and drainage. D is to replace the existing seats with new seats. E, we have an existing sound bunker and we want to replace that with a concrete pad. F, we're hoping to expand the seating area. And lastly, G, we propose to install sound baffles and a pedestrian covering at the rear of the site. So next we have slides that go through all of these improvements individually. This first slide is an existing picture of what's there today. So there's an existing metal frame structure. It's about 20 feet tall by 30 feet wide. So the Tom Moffett family has proposed to contribute to an entry sign. At this time, we don't have specific details on the design or appearance of this sign, but the maximum dimensions will not exceed this existing structure there. This next slide shows an open air food concession. So again, this is an existing photo of an existing concession about 20 feet by 20 feet. The applicant is proposing to replace this structure in kind, so a new open air food concession of similar scale, size, and function as well. This next slide is a photo of the orchestra pit area and apron area. So this is directly in front of the stage. In rainfall events, this apron area doesn't properly drain, so stormwater will pond there. So the applicant is proposing to demolish a portion of the existing wall highlighted in the upper left of this image on the left side, as well as general drainage improvements to that concrete apron area as well. This next slide is just an image of the existing seats. So we intend to replace the seats in kind. So just new seats, same layout, same style. This next slide, item E, behind the fixed seats area, there's a sound bunker, and it's approximately 15 by 15 feet, and it was built in the 1990s. This bunker was intended to be utilized by sound and lighting engineers during performances, but however, the current practices is to have the sound and engineers out in the open where the public would be, so it's a very underutilized bunker. So we're proposing to demolish this and replace it with a utility slab there, about 15 by 15 feet there. This next slide shows an expansion of the fixed seating area. So we're proposing to expand the fixed seating area into the upper lawn to provide up to an additional 2,000 fixed seats. So the fixed seats would kind of just be an extension of the existing seats. Imagine just adding a few rows and moving the wall in the back up a bit there. So the proposed improvements will not increase or change the capacity of the shell. It will create more seats by swapping that with existing lawn area seats there. And this is the last slide I have here today. And at the rear of the shell, existing photo in the bottom, but there's a concrete sidewalk there as well as a chain link fence on the back. And behind that is a bunch of very beautiful existing trees. So we are proposing to construct a new sound baffle wall with a pedestrian overhang as depicted in the image in the bottom right there. So the wall and overhang are anticipated to be approximately 10 to 20 feet and extend the length of the lawn seating area. They will be under the tree covering, so it's not going to be an extremely large or rambunctious design. It's intended to really fit in the area there. And lastly, I just wanted to note that, the Waikiki Shell, the Tom Moffett Waikiki Shell, it's a very one-of-a-kind venue for outdoor concerts and large gatherings. It's situated right across Waikiki Beach, and of course the world-famous Diamond Head. The shape is shaped as a shell and boasts extremely great acoustically sophisticated design, which makes an ideal location for concert venues. So we request your support for this SMA to sustain current and future operations at this critical city asset. So I wanted to thank the chair as well and his staff for providing a CD1 to this, which we support, and thank DPP for their hard work on the EA and the SMA. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Sato? Go right ahead, Councilmember Kiaina.
Thank you, Mr. Sato. I like the idea of the installation for sound. So I think that's going to be a good addition to this project. I do have to query you on the expansion of the fixed seating area. It's actually doubling it, right? Currently, we have 1,958, and you are adding 2,000. Is that correct?
We're adding up to 2,000, so.
Okay, but the current fixed seats is 1,958, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And what is the justification? Is it because there are not enough opportunities for the current load of tourists to come? Is that the reason for it? Because I hope it's not to try to increase the number of tourists coming to Waikiki.
Thank you for that question. And I have DES here who can help answer this, but the goal is to improve the guest experience by creating more premium and accessible seats. So these seats will be able to be used by elderly or other people who might have trouble sitting in the lawn area. So we still will have a significant lawn area with up to 4,000 seats there. So
yes, but is it because the current, I guess I'm trying to find out, is the current seating insufficient and that there is a need? Can you explain that?
Sorry, Tracy Kubota, Deputy Director, DES. So it's not an insufficient amount, because we're not increasing the total seating capacity of the entire shell, but the fixed seating is just going to be expanded, because what it is there's a premium for the seats. A lot of people prefer seats when they come to the venue. So a lot of the promoters do request more seated areas. So we worked it out so that we could just expand the rows right behind the existing and not interrupt too much of the lawn space, but preserve the lawn as well.
No, I understand that part, but I'm trying to understand your what your capacity is now. Do you normally, are you at capacity with 2,000 and you need an additional 2,000 more for those who want to be seated? Is
The
that
additional seats will help, yes.
and so you guys are maxed out all the time?
Yes, the seated area is always the most maxed, correct.
Okay, so again, the idea is first of all, I'm looking forward to a vibrant Waikiki shell. I just want to make sure we're not trying to increase the number of tourists in Waikiki.
Yes,
We're
yes.
just trying to accommodate those who are already coming here.
Correct.
Because you are at maximum capacity and more people would like to have fixed seats. Is that correct?
Exactly.
And I'm assuming, because I know that there's some hula shows who would like to recreate what has been lost, that we used to have before, and I think that would be beneficial both for visitors as well as locals alike. And with that, you'd probably be able to accommodate more people with that.
Yes.
Yeah, not just the people who are coming to see the show, but a lot of families, of course, want to see their ohana in
Yes,
the shows.
exactly.
And so it'd be for both locals and tourists alike.
Right,
Okay.
yes. Thank you.
I just wanted to know that. Thank you so much for your clarification.
Yeah, appreciate the question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we proceed on, may I introduce Councilwoman Andrea Tupola. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Chair. Just a follow-up question for DES. So how often, obviously the expansion means that either A, you're having super success at the shell and now you're going to bump it up and that's why we're going to spend money on this. So how often are you guys renting it out and at what capacity annually?
Okay, let me try and answer the first part of your question. So we are trying to actually book more, of course, and increase our bookings at the Shell. Right now, it is being heavily utilized as well because of the closures for Blaisdell's construction. However, going forward, we are just trying to make sure that we can enhance and support what people have been asking for over the years to just be able to get more people seated and more people accommodated for the types of events. When you see a lot of shows come through and you have more seniors wanting to have a seat, they've always expressed that they don't prefer sitting in the lawn area and having to drag in a chair. Nonetheless, the type of events that we're trying to do is going to be enhanced by hopefully a more regular booking of some type of shows that we are planning for in the future, and of course to welcome back all the current promoters we've had to our facilities on a more regular basis.
Would you say like 60 a year? Like how often are you guys renting it a year? Like
Right-
5 times a month?
Well, right now it's, I don't have a current number. I can provide the current status for you. And the future is a little bit hard to tell because we do go up for a couple years, but it's just the annual events that we're looking at. So I can get back to you on the numbers for that.
Yeah, I know this is a SMA permit, but I mean, in regards to the permit for the rebuild, but I think it'd be good for us to know that we're investing in something that has positive net gain, brings profit into the city. I think lastly, every time there is any type of renovation, if there can be some consideration for energy savings, a lot of the facilities in the city consume a lot of energy, which is the majority of their bills. And so if there is opportunities on the concession stands or other places that you guys are putting it up, like considering that, seeing as though every department does have to pay some form of electric bills or, things, external costs that I think could bring down costs if we construct more efficiently.
Totally agree. Thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate that.
Chair.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion for Mr. Sato? At this point in time, let's proceed on with the Department of Planning and Permitting. Director Apuna.
Thank you, Chair. DPP is in support of the proposed CD1 for this SMA, and we're available for any questions.
Any questions for the director at this point in time? If not, thank you very much. And finally, we have from the administration, Ms. Dita Hollyfield, the director of the Department of Enterprise Services. Ms. Hollyfield, would you like to say a few words on behalf of your project?
Yes, I just want to say thank you so much for the collaborative effort from everybody in the different departments. DES is very excited to roll out a lot of new shows and things we're trying to attract, especially since we're going to have the concert hall closed in phases this next year. The Waikiki show will always be a very important piece of the puzzle in terms of the offering and the experience to have an outdoor entertainment venue. So thank you very much for your support.
Okay, any questions for the director? The chair just has one question, Ms. Hollyfield.
Yes.
Has there been discussion in regards to all of the utilization of Kalakaua Avenue with DTS with different events that has occurred, whereby not the residents, but HRA is a little concerned that businesses are being taken away when these particular events occurred, and maybe having it at the Shell would be another venue because of the traffic conditions on Kalakaua.
So there are some ongoing discussions as we get busier and people are more excited to book the Shell. We do have a Sunday through Thursday event we're going to be rolling out pretty soon at the Shell, as a lot of people know. So definitely that is on our radar, and we look forward to finding solutions that will fit everybody's needs.
Okay, and one final thought, if it is possible that if you could have some communication and dialogue with our city and county zoo, package it as a zoo and, Waikiki shell.
I'm really excited that you said that because we are currently doing that. We're rolling out a digital platform, and we're also looking to partner with the DT, Department of Transportation, to package the zoo and other activities that we can all market together so we can be successful.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Members, any further discussion? If not, let's proceed on with remote testimony. Madam Clerk?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you very much. Can we proceed on now with the in-person testimony? Madam Clerk, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Great, thank you. Is there anyone else in the council chamber who would like to testify on Resolution 23-238? Please come forward to the testifier's podium and state your name for the record. Okay, I don't see anyone. Let's move on. Members, we are in discussion at this point in time. If there is no discussion, the chair would like to recommend that Resolution 23-238 be amended to the posted Committee Draft 1 as further amended as we discussed to replace the reference to the ROH Section 25-3.2 with a reference to ROH 25-4.1 in the fourth whereas clause, and to make miscellaneous, technical, and non-substantive amendments. Any discussion? Any objections or reservations? Hearing none, the resolution has been amended to a CD1. The chair then recommends that Resolution 23-238 CD1 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Best wishes to the show. Moving on to agenda number 7. This resolution grants a special management area major permit to Masato Matsuura to allow for the construction of a new 2-story single-family detached dwelling and improvements to an existing single-family detached dwelling on approximately 26,899 square feet of land zone R-10, which is in the residential district located at 327 and 331 Portlock Road in Hawaii Kai and identified as tax map P 3-9-003:001 and 018. Members, we have posted to the agenda a proposed Committee Draft 1 version of the resolution. For your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. At this time, I would like to propose a technical verbal amendment to the posted Committee Draft 1 version of the resolution. In the third whereas clause, replace the reference to ROH 25-3.2 with a reference once more to ROH 25-4.1. Joining us in the council chamber, we now have McKenna White from the Planning Solutions to give a brief presentation on the project. And for your information, the presentation is available online as Miscellaneous Communication 559 of 2023. Okay. Miss, is it McKenna? Okay.
Aloha, Chair. Aloha, members of the committee and members of the public. My name is McKenna White. I'm a planner with Planning Solutions, and I'm going to briefly present this 327 and 331 Portlock Road Site Improvements Project, which is located in Hawaii Kai, here on Oahu, on TMK's number 3931 and 39318. And this is in support of a Special Management Area Permit Major. Okay, so the process to date involves sending out scoping letters on November 21st of last year. A neighborhood board presentation was made on March 28th of this year. The SMP major application was submitted on June 15th of this year, and the SMA hearing was held by DPP on August 23rd. And of course, that brings us to today, October 18th, here in front of your committee. The project is located at on Portlock Road out in Hawaii Kai. You can see here it's out on the water on Honolulu Bay. Zooming in a little bit, and what brings us here is that the project is located completely within the special management area, and the project constitutes development and therefore requires a special management area permit. The project area is zoned R10 residential, And as you can see, I believe, yes, on this aerial photograph, it's 2 parcels that are under a joint development agreement, and so are treated essentially as a single zoning parcel. Now, the project plan, as shown in the application, includes a proposed roof deck, a proposed exercise room that would be an enclosure of an existing patio, a proposed second residence closer to Portlock Road, away from the water, a proposed raised lanai and pool expansion of an existing pool. Now, as you can see, as applied for, all of the development would be outside of the sea level rise exposure area, and it meets all the shoreline setback and yard setback requirements. Now, as sometimes happens, the owner's plans have evolved since the SMA application was submitted. We anticipate that the SMA permit will be awarded as submitted in the application and as shown on the previous slide. If that happens, the applicant would likely seek a minor modification to the permit to reflect the revised plan shown here. So as you can see, there is no second residence. In discussions with DPP, the minor modifications seemed appropriate because the reduced scope would have less impact on SMA resources. And we are disclosing this to you folks now so that you understand why the final project will likely be somewhat different and smaller in scope. As this drawing shows, the revised plan remains sufficiently set back from the shoreline and complies with all the yard requirements. The main difference, as I noted, is the lack of a second residence. Instead, the garage for the existing residence would be expanded to add sufficient space for 1 additional parking spot. And second, the size of the pool expansion is substantially reduced and the lanai would not be modified. We have reached out to SHPD regarding this modification to plans. We have not yet heard their response. So we have a sense of what is there now. This is a photograph of the existing residence, and the pool is in the foreground there. This is on the Makai side of the property, and a view of the Mauka side of the property, showing, from Portlock Road, the driveway and the existing wall. Finally, as far as compliance with the land use ordinance, both the proposed, as submitted design and the revised action I noted, both comply with all the design standards for minimum lot area, lot width, depth, the setbacks requirements, maximum building area, maximum height. It meets all of these requirements. And it's worth noting that both the proposed action and the revised plan reduce the impervious area on the site because the existing tennis court would be removed under both designs. And that concludes my very brief presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. White. Any questions for Mr. White and the Portlock project? Okay, Councilmember Kiaino.
Hi, thank you, Chair. I don't see the council member for this district, so I feel obliged to be consistent with regard to concern over Ivikupuna. So my question is, given that this project will be developed on Jocus sands, which have been known to contain Ivikupuna, has the applicant reached out to OHA, the Oahu Island Burial Council, and or members of the Oahu Historic Preservation Commission regarding this project?
Oh, Mr. White, could you press the...
To my knowledge, no. The dialogue has been limited to the State Historic Preservation Division. I think that scoping letters were sent to OHA, not to the other 2 entities that you mentioned, but no response was received.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further discussion for Mr. White?
I suppose one thing that I would add is that there's no fill going in on the Jocus sand as part of the design, and the revised redesign of the pool amounts to approximately 255 cubic feet of difference, the delta, okay, expansion.
Okay. Any further discussion for the applicant? If not, let's proceed on to the Department of Planning and Permitting, Director Apuna.
Thank you, Chair. DPP is in support of the proposed CD1 with the exception of the requirement, the prohibition of importation of fill. We believe that it is overly, it's excessive. If without that prohibition, we'll have the flexibility to allow some fill if it's necessary and under the right conditions with the soils report, et cetera. So we would appreciate if that prohibition would be taken out of the CD1. And I'm available for any questions as well as staff.
Okay. Any questions for the director? No question. Thank you very much. Moving on, Madam Clerk, when we proceed now with the remote testimony, do we have any remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any in-person testimony, Madam Clerk?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, is there anyone else in the council chambers who would like to testify on this particular project in Portlock? Okay, there is none. Members, we are in discussion.
Chair,
Yes.
I was
please,
wondering, are you
Council-
amenable to that? Are you amenable to DPP's request relating to the removal of the prohibition?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, no, that's where we can discuss it now.
Oh,
and-
okay.
Yeah. The prohibition was put in there primarily because we just wanted to prohibit it rather than giving them the flexibility. But if you want to give the department the flexibility, it's another discussion that we can have now with the department. And Mr. White, your point about there is no imported fill for the Portlock project that you're talking about, right?
That's correct, sir. It's actually 50 cubic yards of cut, but
Okay. And that's where I'll bring up the department to say a few words of why they would like to have the flexibility on the prohibition.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. I'm Elizabeth Krieger from the Department of Planning and Permitting. The primary reason, even though the applicant says they're not bringing in any fill, we would prefer not to have a complete prohibition on fill because should, during construction, a small, minor amount of fill be required in that moment, we have a mechanism to deal with that. So our initial condition stated that should fill be required, the soils report would also be required, which is a standard condition. If the project is required to be consistent with the approved plans don't show that a significant amount of fill is being brought in. In fact, they say that they're using the cut from the pool wherever fill may be required. But for our purposes, there's a question when there's a complete prohibition on exactly what that prohibits. Does that prohibit, wood chips? It's just a little much for us to be able to impose. When we talk about importation of fill requiring a soils report that would be approved by the DLNR, we know what we're talking about because that would be something like a surprise change to the project where, say, they needed an additional post or pier or something. And, in that way, we don't want our hands tied because we know that we would be able to deal with that during the building permit processing phase.
Councilmember Cordero, please.
Thank you. Hi, Ms. Kruger. I was just wondering if we do pass this out with a prohibition and if there needs to be a minor fill, if ever necessary in the future, what is the process then for the applicant?
Well, the process, if we had no condition about fill and the proposal said there was no fill and the approved plans showed no fill, the process would be to do a minor modification to look at whether the fill would have an impact to coastal zone resources, and if it did, condition it appropriately to mitigate those impacts. If there's a complete prohibition in a condition, that makes it much more difficult for us to say that we could proceed with a minor modification. So, as an example, one SMA permit had a council-imposed condition about a wall in the required yard, and when the applicant came and said, we really need this wall in the required yard, we required them to come all the way back to City Council. So they had to go through the SMA process again in order to deal with that. So for our purposes, we have a mechanism for dealing with fill. I would prefer there to be no condition about fill rather than a prohibition, but our number one preference is our initial condition.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, has
Thank
your
you.
question been answered? Okay, great. Any further discussion, members, for the department? Okay. So Liz, the prohibition was incorporated in the measure primarily to support the department that Mr. White knows that there is not going to be any, more to what may be required. But more importantly, the workload on behalf of you folks. If we were to take off or amend the deletion of the prohibition, would that create more workload for the division?
If you take off the condition for the prohibition, it would make it easier for us. It would make our workflow better. It probably won't impact us since the applicant says there won't be any fill. But should again the project change at the last minute or in the field during construction and they find something, then there is the possibility that it would create an enormous amount of work for us.
And then for past approvals prior to, let's say, all of us here who are here at the council today, has there been any examples of prohibition incorporated into these type of projects as far as approvals?
What we have done in almost every situation where we wanted a prohibition because an applicant was proposing a lot of fill on Jacques sand, we have incorporated the condition that we had initially. So, for example, we would first require that the project be amended to reduce to the extent possible the fill in that area, and then as a secondary measure required that a soils report be prepared for review and approval by the Department of Land and Natural Resources. So that is how we've been dealing, first and foremost, reducing as much as possible any fill on Jacques sands. But whenever there's construction occurring, it can become difficult because the materials brought on site during construction, we just need to make sure that we know what types of materials are coming on site. And so this was essentially a standard condition fail-safe to make sure that we could require that should any change be required.
Okay. Any further discussion for the department? Thank you very much.
Chair?
Councilmember Cordero,
I would be
please.
open to not including the prohibition and taking the recommendation from DPP.
Okay. Any further discussion? Councilmember Tyler Dos Santos Tam, are you open to the idea of deleting the prohibition?
I think that the presentation made by DPP sounds reasonable given that a total prohibition might prohibit things like, wood chips or soil for landscaping.
Okay. Councilmember Kiana, you're open to deleting the prohibition phase, that giving flexibility to DPP?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
whatever DPP recommends.
Okay. Councilmember Wire.
Aye.
Okay. And finally, our agent, your thoughts? Would you be open to the deletion of the prohibition?
Yes, Chair.
Even though you're not going to be, doing that type
That's
of
correct.
access?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, at this time, then the chair recommends that Resolution 23-242 be amended to the posted CD1, and as further amended as we discussed to replace the reference to ROH 25-3.2 with a reference to ROH 25-4.1 in the third whereas clause, and take into consideration that we will be deleting the provisions in regards to the prohibition of the fill. Condition E. Okay. And finally, we're going to make some miscellaneous technical and non-substantive amendments. Are there any discussion, any objections or reservations? Hearing none, the resolution has been amended to a CD1. The chair then recommends that Resolution 23-242, CD1 be reported out for adoption. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Best wishes, Mr. White. Moving on to agenda number 8, Resolution 23-244. This resolution would approve an application for a plan review use permit to allow for the implementation of the 2019 Master Plan for the University of Hawaii at Manoa campus, which is comprised of approximately 307.67 acres of land zone R5 residential, R-7.5 residential, P-1 restricted preservations, and P-2 general preservation districts located at 2500 Campus Road in Manoa and identified as tax map keys 2-8-007:029, 2-8-015:001, 2-8-016:001, 2-8-023:003, and 009 through 001. 2-8-02. Okay, yeah, okay, let me go back and restate it once more. And 009 through 019 as far as 2-8-026:014, 2-8-029:001, and 030 to 034 at 2-9-00:012, 2-9005:005, and 007 through 010 at 2-9-013:054, 2-9-023:001, and 026, 2-9-026:001, 037, and 038, 2-9-027:054, and 3-3-056:001. Members, we have posted to the agenda a proposed committee draft 1 version of the resolution, and for your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. Joining us in the council chamber, we have Keola Chang from Wilson Okamoto Corporation, and standing by remotely, we have Jan Govea from the University of Hawaii to give a brief presentation of the project. For your information, the presentation is available online as miscellaneous communication 560-20, 560 of 2023. Okay, let's call Mr. Chang up. Keola?
Chair Stay?
Yes, Ms.
Hi,
Govea.
sorry, this is Jan Govea. I'm doing this via Zoom or remotely. I really do apologize that I cannot be there in person due to a scheduling conflict. I'm not able to be there just for this one, but I'll definitely be at all the rest. We do have Keola in the room. He's a consultant on our team, but I was hoping to be able to deliver the presentation. If not, Keola can do a great job as well, whatever's easiest.
Okay, why don't we get Mr. Keola Chang to do it since you hired him?
Okay.
Okay, please proceed.
Okay.
Hello, Council. Jan, you want to do the screen share on the presentation?
Okay.
Sure.
Oh, okay. Oh, then you know what? Let's tag team it.
Yeah, we can do
Try
this.
to tag team it?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. Alrighty. Okay, well, again, good morning. Thank you very much for hearing this measure. As our testimony indicated, we do support resolution 23-244 and the CD1 draft with just a minor comment that we hope to get clarification on today. And before we get into the details of the permit application, we thought it would be beneficial to provide some high-level stats about our Manoa campus. So the Manoa campus was established in 1907, and really the last development boom for the campus was back in the 1960s. And since then, it's really been fairly stagnant, especially since 2010. We haven't had a lot of new development on the campus anywhere. The PRU permit application covers over 300 acres of our main campus. We have over 300 buildings in our inventory, and they range from portables all the way through to large-scale buildings. We have more than 8 million gross square feet of facilities on the main campus, and we also operate our own electric grid, and it powers the equivalent to 15,000 homes daily. So we're a fairly large complex Research One campus. Using our fall 2021 statistics, we had over 19,000 students enrolled on our campus. We should note that it did hit a peak back in 1975 of over 22,000 students. So we definitely have been able to take on more headcount as indicated in our prior years. We have over 6,000 employees that report to campus every day. We have over 1,600 dorm units, 4 NCAA Division I stadiums. We have competition, aquatic, and tennis complexes. We have a 60,000 square foot recreation center, 2 theaters, and we do over $350 million in research a year. We currently are operating under a 2007 LRDP/2009 PRU, which the City Council approved again back in 2009. It did cover a development plan over a span of 5 to 10 years. And over that time frame, we did come in with both minor and major modifications to that PRU. Currently, the 2009 PRU is set to expire March 31 of next year. Really quickly, the current PRU that we're operating under did assume 20,000 student enrollment count, 6,000 plus employees, as well as a 30,000 de facto day population on our campus. Our baseline square footage back in 2009, we did start off with 8.2 million square feet of floor space. And fast forward to where we are today, we're not that much higher. We're still in the 8-point-something million range. As you can see here to the right, this is kind of is a summary of what the 2009 PRU did approve. It did approve an additional 2.685 million square feet of space on our campus. However, due to funding constraints as well as changes in priorities, we really were only able to construct about 783,000 or 0.8 million square feet of space on our campus, which really leaves an unbuilt permitted square footage under our existing PRU of 1.9 million square feet of space. As the 2009 PRU was expiring and we knew we needed to come in with an updated LRDP, the campus really did ask itself, what did we really see and want to see for the future development of our campus? And instead of focusing on buildings, we really looked at some high-level guiding principles that we wanted to address through the build-out plan. And these are it. I won't go over it in detail, but we really focused on developing the whole student. We wanted to steward our natural environment, cultivate collaboration, and really leverage some unique attributes of place. We also wanted to optimize our infrastructure, our facility, land, and resources. We wanted to strengthen the gathering experience. We wanted to activate our landscape and campus character and really become a living and learning lab for our students. With all that in mind, we did identify several projects that would encompass our current 2019 LRDP, which was approved by the board, our Board of Regents back in 2019. And these are a list of the projects that were identified. The ones on the left are projects that actually have already been approved by DPP as part of a minor or major modification to our existing PRU. And again, that is because our long-range development plan was approved by the board back in 2019. This is how long we have been working on our PRU application. But time continues to go by. So what's already been approved has been the expansion of the Clarence TC Chain Complex to support competition football on our campus, as well as relocation of our track. It did approve a Snyder Hall replacement project, as well as a conversion of our St. Clair Library through a major renovation that converted into a student success center, as well as 2 P3 student housing projects that are all underway. In addition to that, there are other projects that have not commenced yet, and that is a new central traffic center or parking structure on our upper campus to really help alleviate a lot of the traffic that's happening in the neighborhood where many of our students are finding off-site parking. We want to be able to accommodate more parking on campus, as well as a new central administration facility, very similar to the Fosse Municipal Building. We'd like to replace the current ROTC facility with a new consolidated one. We also have a pretty aggressive rooftop and parking lot PV plan that if we ever can get funding for, we really do want to start generating more PV on site. And the remainder of our plan over the next 10 years really is to renovate our existing spaces, as well as demolish some of our temporary portable buildings that are highly energy inefficient. It's not the maximum use of our space, and it helps to support our overall campus development plan, where we enhance the outside experience for our students. This is where I'll turn it over to Keola to kind of explain maybe a little bit more of the technical makeup of the PRU application.
Sure. Thanks, Jan. So, building off of, what Jan's kind of presented to you guys, I think it's, good to take a step back and, take a look at the genesis of this whole process. So as you know, the underlying zoning underneath, most of the university properties basically are R75. And for the university to operate as it is, we've been, working under this PRU structure, which, gets rehashed every 10 years or so. So as we go through the PRU process, we end up doing, a long-range development plan every 10 to 15 years, wherein the university tries to, get a best guess of, what its goals will be from a capital improvements and facilities, development standpoint. So, to understand where we are now, we really had to go back 10 years or more, actually, to the 2007-2009 PRU, which, as Jan kind of gave an overview, was, quite aggressive and really ambitious in terms of build out. So, as we've gone through this LRDP process, we've come to find that, the main goals of the university now is right-sizing its facilities. We have a lot of space that's underutilized, so finding a way to, consolidate and make best use of, university assets. So that's kind of the core focus. And in tow with that, in the academic space, as the flagship university of our state, academic needs constantly are changing, right? So that is also echoed in terms of, facility needs. So the PRU process is a little clunky. We can come up with the best guess in terms of, for the next 10 years, this is what we anticipate needing to get done. But, as history's proven, over the past 10 years of the previous PRU, there's a host of projects that come out of the woodwork. Ching facility, for example, along with everything else that, Jan mentioned, things that just pop up out of, middle of nowhere. And then we have to try to find a way to pivot to those, which is why we've always had to, jump on doing minor and major mods. So on this go around, we've worked with DPP to do something a little different. We've come up with a internal campus zone framework, which you can see in the figure above, wherein we've kind of looked at, the various sectors of the campus and identified, design standards that can, govern at least, what can be developed there in terms of both use, intensity, height, et cetera. And we've really trying to push us as a way for us to, streamline development of facilities moving forward to sort of take a step back from having to do, excessive numbers of, minor or major mods. So by having a, consistent understanding of, what can go where, we're hoping to at least simplify our interface with DPP moving forward for projects that fall outside of the bounds of, the existing PRU application as is before you right now. So next slide, Jan. So in addition to that, the fun part of doing the LRDP is, we can revisit, a host of different things. What are the campus's needs from an infrastructure standpoint, whether it's wastewater, water, or drainage. The whole flooding back in 2004 was a big deal. That was like a 20-year storm event. So we've, underneath this process, we've taken a deep dive into, modeling out flood scenarios and, adjusting to those. So, part of this LADB process, we've redone our sewer, water, drainage master plans to try to bring our campus, into the 21st century in a sense. I guess the 22nd century now. But yeah, in addition to that, as Jan kind of outlined, another one of the strong initiatives has been to push for, not necessarily a net zero situation, but, pushing towards having the university be a little more resilient in terms of relying on PV and such. So we've, looked into various scenarios where we're going to put PV on top of structures, on, walkways, et cetera. So that's another component of this process that's been kind of fun to dive into. But, that's kind of where we're at. We're trying to modernize the campus, but do it in a way that's, respectful to the environment and is not, wasteful in terms of, usage of funds. But that's kind of the recap, guys.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chang. Any questions for the administration? Ms. Gouveia, Vice President Jan Gouveia. Yep, go right ahead, Councilmember Wire.
Thank you, Chair. I know we have a full agenda, so just quick questions, all of the presentation. I just was curious about, so the December 2nd deadline, that's the 60-day deadline for approval of the permit? Is that correct? Oh, okay. What's the process for requiring an extension if it's needed? Or are you aware?
Not fully aware. I mean, typically we would extend the basis to allow you guys more time to provide feedback. For us, everything that we have in the application is before you, so there's nothing from our end. It would just be to accommodate, your guys' processing.
Okay. Yeah. So an extension is possible if needed?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Any further questions for Mr. Chang or for Vice President Gouveia? No? Okay. I just have one question.
What's up, Calvin?
Ms. Keola and Jan, I don't see any alignment for the rail.
We got to work on that.
We would love for the rail to get here. We have informally kind of cited a couple sites, but it's not part of this PRU application. Hopefully it's in the next 5 to 10 years, though.
Although, Calvin, it did come up in early scoping, as part of the long-range development plan process, finding a place on or near the campus to accommodate a rail station if it was feasible. But,
and one final question, maybe not for Keola, but for Jan. Jan, what's the present situation for the St. Francis School that is adjacent to the university? What group bought that school, St. Francis, that is adjacent to the university? So I'm just inquiring because, yeah, it's another big project that may occur in Manoa Valley later on.
Yeah. I do not know. And I believe the state of affairs is it still hasn't been through a final close. The last I heard it might have been an escrow. But I can try to do some digging around and get back to you.
Okay.
We've not heard of a sale. A final sale, yeah.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Chang or for Vice President Gouveia? If there is no further questions, let's move on to Administration, Director Apuna.
Thank you, Chair. DPP is in support of this PRU permit, specifically the proposed CD1.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the director? If there is no questions, we can move on now with the remote testimony. Madam Clerk, do we have any remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you very much. We can move on with the in-person testimony. Madam Clerk, do we have any in-person testifiers?
Yes, Chair, I believe we do.
Okay. We have Mr. Nate Kinney. Mr. Kinney?
Chair Nathaniel Kinney from the Hawaii Regional Council of Carpenters. We are opposed to this measure. We've reached out in various times over the years to sit down about some of the contracting practices that have been occurring at the university to no avail. And then finally, it culminated in 2021 where there was a workplace accident where a worker from out of state was killed in a construction accident that occurred at the TC Ching complex. And we think that the UH should be reaching out to industry stakeholders to come to some sort of conclusion about workplace safety, state apprenticeship programs, things of that nature to make sure that the contracting practices on UH occur in a more transparent and safe manner.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Kinney? If not, okay, thank you very much. Next, we have another testifier in person.
Aloha, Chair and Council members. Chris Delaney with Pacific Resource Partnership. You have our testimony. We are in opposition. We cannot support this project until we have assurances that the University of Hawaii is, one, ensuring that contractors working on the project are paying their workers prevailing wages pursuant to Chapter 104 of the HRS. Two, giving preferences to contractors who hire residents to build these projects. And three, requiring construction trades working on the construction projects to participate in an apprenticeship program approved by and registered by the State Department of Labor and Industrial Relations. Anytime we use taxpayer money and resources like state lands to build projects, we need to ensure that we are providing a benefit to Hawaii residents and the economy. We also need to ensure that workers are skilled and safe while doing this type of work. The preference for hiring local workers and paying them the prevailing wage will help Hawaii's residents afford the high cost of living in Hawaii. Hiring workers who participate in an apprenticeship program approved and registered by the state will ensure that workers on University of Hawaii projects are well trained in construction methods and safety standards. Thank you for this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further discussion for the testifier? Chris, I just have one question.
Sure.
For this particular, issue, which is more planning, a long-range plan.
Yes.
The concerns that you have, shouldn't that be brought to the state? Because they're under the state procurement code. They're under the labor laws that we have on the books. You're using state property, you're using state money. It should be all unionized workers. So if you want us to deny this major plan review that I personally feel is a great 10-year plan of action. So that's why I'm saying, isn't it the jurisdiction of the state legislature or the administration? Yeah. And I think Ms. Govea, the statements made by these two individuals highlight, the miscommunication or no dialogue that you're having. And, I can't see why we should vote down this, plan review process on behalf of the university as a whole.
Yeah. So I guess in response to that, I would say that, that is one process, but I think the council can guide the university as a developer, via the resolution and encouraging them or urging them to put it in their RFP process too. That's something I think that the city council could do, is to provide some direction to make sure that they're complying with the laws and also that they have well-trained people through a state-approved apprenticeship program working on these projects for safety reasons, as well as so we get the best quality work while using our taxpayer dollars.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? No? Yep, please, Councilmember.
Chair,
Kiana.
thank you for, triggering that dialogue, but at the appropriate time, can we have the university officially respond to the comments made by the last two testifiers? And also, what has been undertaken, what kind of dialogue has been undertaken to address their concerns? So you have two testifiers who are opposing this.
Okay, Councilmember Kiana, you can address that question to the Vice President, Jan Govea.
So thank you, Council Member, for that question. First and foremost, we do take safety on our projects very seriously. It is always a first and foremost priority. As far as the concerns that have been expressed by the two testifiers, I have not been personally contacted by them to express their concerns directly to me. I'd be happy to try to meet with them. I'll have my office get their contact information from this testimony and try to schedule something. So that is, so that we can close the gap on where our opinions are on the safetiness of our projects.
Thank you. Can I ask, given the magnitude of this big project, why are you not here in person?
Yes, so I do apologize. I did apologize at the beginning. I do have a conflict. I did not realize that this was going to be scheduled today until last week when the hearing notice was posted. And I do have people who flew in from the mainland that I need to meet with. And so for that type of scheduling purpose, I did request permission to attend this meeting via Zoom. But I will definitely be in person at the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Or we are in discussion. If there is no further discussion, may we proceed on. The chair would like to recommend that Resolution 23-244 be amended to the posted Committee Draft 1. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, the resolution has been amended to a Committee Draft 1. The chair then recommends that Resolution 23-244 and the proposed Committee Draft 1 be reported out for scheduling of a public hearing and then be referred back to the committee. So we will have another opportunity of having Ms. Govea testify here. So it's going to be referred back to the committee. So is there any discussion? Okay, Councilmember.
Chair, I just recommend that, for, again, the magnitude of this project, that they work in tandem with those who've just testified in opposition to this measure, so that their concerns can be addressed in some fashion before this bill comes back to the committee.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wire.
Thank you, Chair. And also wanted to echo those sentiments as shared by Vice Chair.
Okay. Any Councilmember Cordero? No.
Same, and we'll be voting with reservations.
Okay, got it. Councilmember DeSantos Tam? Okay. So if there is no discussion, objections, or reservations, hearing none.
Reservations for myself and Councilmember Cordero.
Two of you, okay, with reservations. So the chair notes that the time needed to consider resolution 23-244 will exceed the current deadline for council action. Therefore, the chair further recommends that the resolution be granted another 60-day extension of time, subject to the receipt of a written request from the applicant. So, Vice President Govea, you have an extension. And at this point in time, do I apologize, or the process as far as having this resolution that came before us, was it submitted to us at a later date, or what happened in the process? You know what I'm saying? If it's so late in the game that they're asking now for the extension, I don't know. Keola, what's the reason why for this process being stymied, or couldn't you have done this? Or couldn't we have done this in summertime, or why this fall?
So the application was turned in earlier, but from a processing standpoint, DPP requested, some additional time. So we formally submitted a request for extension on our side since it had to be initiated from the applicant's end.
Okay, got it. So it's going to be going back, referred back to the committee. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Oh, 2 reservations. Excuse me. Councilmember Wire, Councilmember Cordero, and that's it. Okay. The chair notes that the time needed to consider. Okay, so we can move on. Everything is done, and we'll have another opportunity for another hearing. Moving on to agenda item number 9, Resolution 23-253. This resolution amends Resolution 18-245, CD1, FD1, as amended by Resolution 21-115, CD1, to provide for a further 2-year extension of the deadline to obtain a development permit for the Pupukea Rural Community Commercial Center on approximately 4.5 acres of land, Zone B1, Neighborhood Business District, located at 59-706, 59-712, and 59-720 Kamehameha Highway in Pupukea, and identified as tax map key 5-9-011, 016, 068, 069, and 070. Members, we have posted to the agenda an addendum as a proposed committee draft 1 version of the resolution. For your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda addendum. Joining us in the council chamber, we have Terrence Lee from Lee and Martin, LLP, to give a brief presentation on the reasons for the requested extension of time. For your information, the presentation is available online as Miscellaneous Communication 563 of 2023. Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Chair, council members. I'll be brief. We've submitted a request for an extension because notwithstanding my client's best efforts to obtain the required development permit that has a deadline under the approved SMA major permit, they've been unable to do so. And the reason is because they were tied up for roughly 2.5 years with the Hawaii Department of Hawaii State Department of Transportation in addressing certain engineering and roadway concerns that that agency had. And when they finally got through that, and they thought they were ready to go to secure the building permit, they submitted their tracing to the Board of Water Supply, which had approved it earlier in 2021. But between that period and when they submitted the tracings to Board of Water Supply, the board adopted new rules relating to corrosive soil testing, so they said the client needed to perform those tests. Well, in order to accomplish that, it's going to take much longer than the November deadline for the current SMA major permit. So we've submitted a request for another 2-year extension.
Okay. Any questions for the agent at this point in time requesting a 2-year extension? Based on his comments and statements in regards to the Department of Transportation, Highways Division at the state level, and the Board of Water Supply changes in their policies. If there is no questions for Mr. Lee, thank you very much. Okay. Director Apuna, DPP.
Thank you, Chair. As noted in our findings of fact, conclusions of law and decision in order, we do find that the request for extension is reasonable because the HDOT and Board of Water Supply issues were outside of the control of the applicant, and so that they need this extra time to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the director? Okay, go right ahead, Councilmember Wine.
Mahalo Chair, Mahalo Director for being here. Just a couple quick questions. So I know we're voting today on the extension request. So based on your understanding, are we able to revisit or modify the underlying conditions attached to the original SMA request, or are we limited in any way, or what's your understanding of what we can alter?
I believe we're limited to just the extension of time. I think it would depend on what type of conditions would be added and the scope of what that would entail, but yeah.
Okay. No, I appreciate that.
But I see cores creeping.
Yeah. If Corporation Council has insight, I'd welcome it. But my second question was, while they're chatting, I know it's not under your department, but are you familiar with the clean water funds that the city has?
Yes, a little under DLM.
Yeah, DLM right now. And so based on your understanding, those funds, can they be used? Essentially, it's an acquisition fund. Is that correct?
Yes, I think if there's some public benefit of the property that can be justified in the city's acquisition, in line with whatever the Clean Water Act requirements are. Yes.
Yeah, and those possible criteria include preservation and also recreation. Is that your understanding?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, and then I think the fund was also recently amended to also allow for the maintenance of that inventory once it comes into the city, or that land once it comes into the city inventory.
Right. Yes.
Okay. Mahalo.
Thank you.
I know we have testifiers and everything, so mahalo, Chair.
Councilmember Kiaina, please.
Thank you, Director. Just for my educational purposes, because I know this is just for the extension, but as you know, the community has expressed concerns with regard to non-compliance with the settlement agreement. And since the city is a party to that settlement agreement, can you just explain that this document has nothing to do with whether they're compliant or not, right? Can you just elaborate a little more? And I guess my question also is that type of discussion, is that something that you guys are looking at separately from this resolution today?
Yes, so the settlement agreement to which the city is a party among three parties, I believe, that is separate and different from this request for extension. I believe that the request for extension is also, but it is consistent with the settlement agreement. I mean, I don't think there's any conflict between the two. There are ongoing, relationship among the parties to make sure that the settle agreement is properly, adhered to by the parties.
And if you felt that there were egregious violations to the settlement agreement, you probably would not be here to be recommending that we move forward with this extension, correct?
Right, so long as it, if it was inconsistent, the extension was somehow inconsistent with the settlement agreement, substantively. But yes, I think that we are okay and we continue to work with the parties under the settlement agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further discussion at this point in time for the department? If there is none, thank you very much. Let's move on to the remote testimony. Madam Clerk, do we have remote testifiers?
Yes, Chair, we have a testifier standing by.
Thank you very much. First,
oh my God.
First we have, oops. First we have Ms. Denise.
Where are you now?
Okay, Ms. Denise Antolini, please.
Mahalo, Chair, Say, and council members. Thank you so much.
I know you want me to be brief in my testimony, but I would say, first of all, reflecting on Director Apuna's comments, I believe the extension is completely inconsistent with the settlement agreement. If a party is not compliant with the zoning conditions, I can't imagine why an extension would be granted. So 3 quick points. Number one, the tenant mix requirement is, it's unclear if the city is actually going to enforce it. We've had some good meetings with Director Apuna and others, but there's no verification of actually how it's going to be enforced, and that should be inserted as a condition. Second, there are issues with the wastewater system. And third, I'm apologize that I have to raise this, but the ethical issue regarding Council Chair Martin and the lack of lobbying registration by Mr. Martin and Mr. Lee raised serious ethical issues about the way this issue is brought to council. So with that, we thank you for considering our opposition and open for questions. Mahalo.
Thank you very much, Ms. Antolini. Okay, we have a caller. It's 1808, and the last 3 numbers are 205. Are you there? And what measure are you testifying on? Is it on Resolution 23-253? There's a caller with the last 3 numbers of 205.
Chair,
Yes.
testifier is not responding.
Okay. So, Madam Clerk, are there any more remote testimony or testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, great, thank you. We'll now proceed with the in-person testimony. Do we have any in-person testifiers? And we do have Mr. Larry McElhenney. Larry, please. Please. Oh.
Aloha, Chair Say and committee members. My name is Larry McElhenney, longtime North Shore resident. What I'd like to try and do, if it's okay with you, Chairman, is kind of divide my testimony into 2 segments. I'll start with the short and sweet, to the point, 1-minute version.
Yes.
And then if I could impose on your good nature to elaborate a little bit. I've been following this issue for 20 years, so I do know a little bit about what's going on. And if you will be so kind as to allow me just a little extra time, I'd appreciate it.
Please proceed.
Okay. First and foremost, I'd like people to think about this issue and just use common sense. Common sense, very simple. Does it make sense to put a major retail destination center 100 feet or 200 feet from a marine life conservation district? I hold no, it makes no sense at all. You're also certainly aware of the horrendous traffic situation on the North Shore. You have to realize how serious that problem is. Does it make any sense to put a major retail destination center in an area where it's going to exacerbate the traffic situation? No, it doesn't. HP does not deserve another extension based mainly on their horrible track record. And the non-compliance issues are ongoing. And I'm sorry, we are trying to work with DPP to help them address dozens of other issues on the North Shore. And I don't want to get in a confrontational discussion with the director today, but I take strong exception to her position that everything is hunky-dory. Their recommendation fails to discuss the tenant mix issue, which is first and foremost what a settlement agreement is all about. We have to get the tenant mix issue resolved. The fact that it's not discussed in their recommendation troubles me deeply. I hope that you folks please question DPP further on that issue. I hope that you please insist that HP comply with the terms of the mutual settlement agreement that they and the city signed in January of 2021. And I also hope beyond hope that you folks will support the council member of the district and his efforts to resolve this issue. Matt Wire is doing an outstanding job for our community. Can I talk a little bit about my background on this?
I'll give you 2 more minutes, Mr. McElhenney.
I first became involved in this issue in around 2008. I served on a Citizens Advisory Committee. We were working to revise the North Shore Sustainable Communities Plan. We spent a great deal of time focusing on this particular piece of property. We were concerned about what would happen in the future. It's exactly what's happening. We inserted language into the Sustainable Communities Plan that defined a rural community commercial center as a small cluster of services and businesses to service the surrounding community, not to be a tourist destination. When HP acquired this property and hired Group 70 and Mr. Overton, they have essentially spun the discussion to downplay the rural community center definition. And that bothers me. The downplaying and the spin doctoring continues today. Please vote no on this resolution. And as I said, support Councilmember Wire. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. McElhenney. Is there any other testifiers in person that would like to testify? State your name, please.
My name's John Tilts. I'm a longtime North Shore resident. This project is the wrong project for this piece of property and where it's located, as was mentioned, across the street from a marine sanctuary. I have not talked to one single community member that is in favor of this project. This particular, a little background on myself, I manage one of the largest multidisciplinary engineering firms in the state of Hawaii. We work with a lot of good developers, a lot of okay developers, and we've worked with some very bad developers. These particular developers can't even get on the bad list. And the mutual agreement, the mutual agreement that was signed by the city and county and all the parties should cover what's going on here. And the mentioned possible ethical violations that were done back when the extension was done back in 2021. So please, use some common sense and do not give this extension.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else here in person willing to testify? If there is not, okay. Chief of Staff asks me to get this caller now. 1-808-818, are you there? 1-808-818, the last 3 numerical numbers. Are you there?
Caller is not responding, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there anyone else in the council chamber who would like to testify? Please come forward to the testifier podium and state your name for the record. If there is none, we are in discussion. Members, any discussion? Councilmember Wire.
Mahalo, Chair. I just wanted to note I'll be voting in opposition today, just highlighting the testimony. And looking through it, even the items identified as comments were in opposition. So aside from the applicant, all testimony from the community, over 40 individuals, including Malama Pupuke Waimea, along with the concerns from the Ecological Diversity Center, Department of Health, from prior interactions. I do hope to find a better resolution for this particular parcel. I'm grateful for the administration's or various departments' willingness to discuss the potential use of clean water and natural land funds to potentially purchase this property. I think there's definitely a need for emergency services on the North Shore, particularly those relevant to the recreation that's occurring and also the preservation of this space. I understand that there's been no commitments made, but and in addition that would be a multiple year process, acquiring the facility or the property and then investing in the facility. But I'm grateful that the community has recognized that this particular parcel could be used for those services, and that's ultimately, I think, an option that we could continue to discuss with all the stakeholders. Do appreciate everyone's, willingness to engage on all sides in this conversation. Mahalo, Chair.
Thank you. Any further discussion? We are in discussion already. I apologize. Okay. Any further discussion? If not, at this point in time, the chair would like to recommend that Resolution 23-253 be amended to the committee draft 1 posted on the agenda addendum. Any discussion, objections, or reservations? Hearing none, the resolution has been amended to a committee draft 1. The chair then recommends that Resolution 23-253, Committee Draft 1, be reported out for adoption. Any discussion? Yes, Councilmember Wire.
Mainly for discussion purposes, if the resolution is passed out, of course, my preference would be to further amend the requirements to more clearly lay out the requirement to comply with the settlement agreement along with the B1 zoning and the North Shore Sustainable Communities Plan, but I do understand, the nature of what we're voting on today, given that it's an extension and not necessarily the underlying conditions. But just wanted to put that on the record.
On record. Okay, your point is very much well taken, Councilmember Wire. At this point in time, we are going to be asking for discussion, and we are in discussion. The chair's position is simply put that he'll be supporting this 2-year extension on the premise of the correspondence from the Department of Planning and Permitting. I am not involved in the details of the mutual settlement agreement. I'm just here supporting the 2-year extension at the request of the applicant, that's one. And number two, I truly hope that the applicant has been communicating with the concerns that have been submitted by the testifiers also, attending the neighborhood board meetings, complying with some of the other provisions of the mutual settlement agreement, etc. So that's my justification for voting up on this particular resolution. Okay? So any discussion? If not, any objections for Councilmember Wire?
Yes, Chair.
Okay, or reservations? Hearing none, so ordered, the measure has been adopted. Moving on to agenda item number 10, Bill 6, 2023, Committee Draft 1. This bill would alleviate the backlog of building permit applications and reviews by giving the building official the authority to allow other outside means to review building permit applications for compliance. It's okay? Okay, let me start all over again. Bill 6, the bill would help alleviate the backlog of building permit applications and reviews by giving the building official the authority to allow other outside means to review building permit applications for compliance with pertinent codes. Members, we have posted to the agenda 3 committee draft 2 versions of the bill. For your information, summaries of the amendments for each committee draft 2 are listed on the agenda, and at this time, I will defer to Council Members Tupola and Kiaina to explain each of their committee drafts. Then I will explain my own. Council Member Tupola, can you please discuss your proposed amendments?
Aloha, Chair. Thank you so much. I'm just looking at it right now, making sure it's the right one. Okay. So thank you for incorporating many of these things into your draft. So I'll just read it out loud. But I did amend the definition of eligible project to mean a project that only involves the development of affordable rental housing project pursuant to ROH Chapter 32, consists of commercial building tenant improvements defined as any interior renovation, alteration, or modification of an existing building used for commercial purposes by a tenant or lessee that does not change the functional use of the building from the use indicated or shown on the original building permit. Number 2 amends the definition of owner or tenant to read as follows: owner and tenant, if not the same, the persons having control over the real property that is the subject of the building permit application, having responsibility for the work identified in the building permit, and amends the definition of the relevant code. Letter B, in Section 2 of the bill, relating to self-certification program, 1 adds a new subdivision to require self-certified professionals to be insured with professional liability insurance issued by an insurer authorized to against such risks in the state with minimum policy limits. Number 2, adds a new subdivision to require self-certified professional to attend training classes provided by the Department of Planning and Permitting and to receive a certificate of completion upon demonstrating substantial comprehension of the materials covered in the training class. Letter C, in Section 2 of the bill relating to owners or tenants, references owners and tenants if not the same. Letter D, in Section 2 of the bill relating to the authority of the building official, adds the heading building official. In subdivision 6, references DPP Site Development Division. Number 3, in subdivision 8, clarifies that building official may revoke instead of rescind any building permit under the self-certification program if warranted for health and safety reasons. E, Section 2, subsection F adds heading inspections. So the summary, Chair, is basically there are already requirements for third-party reviewers for insurance as well as for competency exams. I think that it's congruent with what the city is already doing to ensure that self-certifiers are competent and fluent in the housing code, the land use code, and all of the different things that they will be self-certifying in. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Councilmember Kiaina.
Thank you, Chair. My proposal basically limits the measure to commercial tenant improvements and adds DHHL residential projects to be eligible. It requires a certain threshold for liability insurance for self-certified professionals, and it also provides guidance on the qualifications of a self-certified professional to ensure, given the fact that this is a lot of delegation of authority for a project, that it meets certain standards. And I continue to be concerned, however, of this overall bill moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. May I describe my committee draft too? Okay, the version of the bill would amend the definition of eligible projects to include affordable rental housing projects developed under ROH Chapter 32, interior commercial building tenant improvements, excluding exterior improvements, work that would conflict with the previous building permit approval, work that requires approval by the Building Board of Appeals to deviate from a relevant code, or work that involves alternate methods such as prefabricated buildings, and 3, residential projects located on lands managed by or under the jurisdiction of the State Department of Hawaiian Homelands. 2, amend the definition of relevant code to add a reference to the Building Energy Conservation Code and delete the reference to the Sidewalk Code. And 3, amend the self-certification program provisions to require what Councilmember Tupola has stated, that the self-certified professional is to be insured in the amount specified by rule adopted by the building official, and 2, require that self-certified professionals do attend a training class held by the DPP and receive a certificate of completion for class. Those were the amendments for Chair's draft at this point in time. Yes. Okay. At this point in time, we're very fortunate to have Managing Director Michael Formby to testify. Can I use the bathroom? Please,
Morning.
go right ahead.
Good morning, Committee Chair Say and Vice Chair Dos Santos Tam, committee members. Mike Formby, Managing Director. I just came today to provide a little historical context on the origination of the Bill 6 self-certification program. And it came to the mayor and I on a weekend in meeting with builders and developers, and they were predominantly large builders and developers. And their proposal is that if the department could come up with a way to allow credentialed, licensed architects and engineers to self-certify these projects as being compliant with the building code, we would speed up the approval process. And it was a pretty simple concept, and there was a discussion about a tenant improvement project because one of them had a tenant improvement project involving shelving, interior cabinetry that had been held up for quite a while. So that one was specifically discussed, but it was never discussed in any other specific context other than we should look for a way to allow the industry to submit code compliant plans with certification. And we had the department go out and look nationally. Chicago was a program that we looked at. And one thing I wanted to share with you that the mayor and I talk about and we're trying to sort of get back into perspective is that we believe DPP has become a little bit too involved in the review of plans. And if they were submitted as code compliant from the beginning, then we wouldn't have to spend so much time. And there are two Supreme Court cases, and I'm happy to get the site for the council members and their staff, but one is called Swire, and the other is called Life of the Land. And they both talk about the function of DPP in checking off all the boxes for code compliance as being, quote, purely ministerial, quote. That's what the Hawaii Supreme Court has said about DPP's function. In other words, it's not that they're intended to go in and to redraw and recommend movement of windows and recommend changes. The plans are supposed to come in code compliant so that the department makes ministerial decisions about the plans. And that's where we're trying to get to a place where more and more of these projects are able to come in, signed off, certified by architects and engineers as being code compliant so that they can go through the process much faster, more quickly. And there was never any intent from the administration that this be limited to certain projects or certain types of projects. And I appreciate council in your policy deliberations having these thoughtful discussions. And whatever you decide, we'll come up with the rules to make it work. But I just want to let you know that our goal is to see that more of these projects, whether they're small or they're large or mid-size, are able to go through the department much more quickly by having credible, licensed architects and engineers certify them in advance. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Managing Director. Any questions for the Managing Director? If not, thank you very much. Director Apuna.
Thank you, Chair. DPP also does appreciate the efforts of the council members putting forth these different versions, which I think they're pretty much consistent with a few variations, and a lot of the variations I think are policy calls because it is very consistent. But we look forward to the policy calls that will be made here, and then when this bill passes, we've already begun working with stakeholders on the administrative rules to execute this bill. So hopefully we can move quickly so that this becomes an option for those that are able to self-certify, are qualified, and can take some of the load off of DPP for certain projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Okay, Councilmember Kiaino.
Firstly, I just wanted to note that I appreciate the narrowing of the eligible projects to include only ROH Chapter 32 projects, DHHL residential projects, and commercial tenant improvements. On one hand, I can appreciate that these projects should be processed much quicker than other projects, as envisioned by the existing ordinance. However, I also understand that one of the contributors to the delays are rejected applications, yeah? So can you share DPP's experience with reviewing building permits for Chapter 32 rental projects?
So Bill 7, Chapter 32 projects, I think it's been on the book since 2019, so it's relatively newer. And the requirements itself, they are a little difficult to, or they were kind of difficult to navigate between DPP and the plan makers. But I think we're getting on a better footing together to make sure that they go through more quickly.
I understand that some of the delays are related to errors and other non-conforming issues. Is that correct?
Yes, to some extent.
Do we have a sense of whether some of the building permit applicants for these projects are experienced developers?
From what I understand, they're more of the smaller developers. These aren't the bigger developers that may have more experience. So yes, I think you could generally say a lot of them are more less experienced developers.
And with regard to these applications that DPP has rejected or applications with errors, are they overseen by a licensed architect?
Yes.
Thank you. I understand that DPP may insert guardrails in the rules, but nothing stops us from also inserting guardrails, a floor, if you will, to ensure that only experienced licensed professionals would be eligible and allow DPP to be even stricter in the rules. Just my comments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Councilmember Tupola.
Thank you, Director, for being here. Always appreciate you being a part of all of these conversations on expediting permits and especially helping local residents. My question is, for the Bill 7 projects of which we're referring to now, it already states in law that after 60 days they would have the approval if they hadn't, heard back from DPP, but many have mentioned that that's not the case, and I understand that this is further going to help them with self-certification. I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that, because I would hate to create another law that's supposed to help expedite these projects that were set forward with a short timeline to see if we can't stimulate affordable housing, but then is it going to be followed, not followed? Because people are still frustrated with the clause that was given to them in Bill 7 that's not being followed.
Thank you, council member. So I think that this bill might provide the next steps. So what you're speaking of in Bill 7, it's the trigger, or it allows, right, that after a certain amount of time, there'll be an approval. But moving forward, we don't want to just say approve, go forward. We want to have assurances that when they move forward without DPP actually reviewing and then approving, that there's insurance and self-certification by the developer that everything will still be to code and be consistent with whatever's required.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, obviously the trigger of the 60 days was a way for kind of to put the pressure on, but I would hate to see things stay in law that we really don't follow. And I know you're trying to clean up different portions. So at a different time, I think we should go through and decide whether or not third parties should be codified, whether or not there's things written that we don't follow, because it's frustrating for people to say, hey, this is in the law, but it's not being followed. So if that truly is not a process of DPP and you think this is a better way, then maybe at a different time we should try to remove that and refer to this or something like that.
Sure. Yeah, we're absolutely open to looking at all third-party review, et cetera, and how we can improve or remove unnecessary parts.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further discussion for the director? Okay, Councilmember DeSanto Sam.
Thank you, Director. And thank you in particular for pointing out that the types of projects that we might want Bill 6 to apply to, really are a policy call. To help us determine what the best course of action would be, I guess there are many different categories of project that are being looked at in the various CDs. There's residential projects in general, there's commercial TI work, there's affordable housing in particular. Of these categories, which ones are the ones where there's the largest backlog? And in your opinion, which ones are kind of the easiest, lowest hanging fruit for DPP to push off to self-certify? Or obviously, if we open it up to everybody, it may end up making the process a little bit more difficult because you're going to have to do a lot of cleanup. But are there particular categories that you're strongly in favor of?
I think the commercial tenant improvements, because they are a large, I think the top portion of commercial projects that we look at, but we also understand that they're less risk in those types of projects. So it seems to be a good balance where it would help remove some of the backlog for commercial projects, and it wouldn't be too much of a huge ask as far as worrying about less complexity involved that we'd be worried we'd have to, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, definitely commercial tenant in projects. Mm-hmm.
And then what happens if a self-certifier under this proposal does something that's not up to code? What's a penalty?
I think that they could lose their self-certification registration, their ability to self-certify. I believe there might be some other penalties, but as far as the building permit itself, there'd probably be generally how we deal with it: a revocation, notice of violation, potential fines. Mm-hmm.
Okay, any further questions for the director at this point in time? If not, thank you very much for your testimony. At this point in time, we can now proceed with remote testimony. Okay, Mr. Greg Thielen, are you there?
Yes, aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Greg Thielen, and I'm here to testify in favor of Bill 6. I am a developer and construction manager for Bill 7 affordable housing projects. The fact of the matter is that we need self-certification because we can't get our building permits for affordable housing projects in a timely manner. As an example, our first project took between 17 and 18 months to get a building permit. For this reason, I ask for your support for this important measure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the testifier on the remote testimony, Mr. Greg Thielen? Madam Clerk, are there any further remote testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, thank you very much. At this point in time, let's move on to the in-person testimony. We have Mr. Nathaniel Kinney.
Chair, committee members, Nathaniel Kitty, Hawaii Regional Council of Carpenters. We are opposed to the section of the measure that would allow for Bill 7 projects to be allowed for self-certification. I don't know how many of the council members were actually on the council at the time when Bill 7 passed, but when Bill 7 passed, both the fire department and DPP had concerns with some of the exemptions to the building code or the changes to the fire code that was going to be made in order to build these projects. So at issue is the fact that these are ultra dense apartments that have exemptions to some of the fire code and some of the building code. And allowing these projects to go through self-certification, I think, opens up the county as well as others to liability. And then on the liability issue, I think when you break open some of the parts of Bill 6 and you notice that the hold harmless provision applies to the owner and the tenant, I think that that's a little bit of a misnomer. If you're going to have self-certification, then the architect and engineer should hold harmless the city. And then if that was to be the case, then I don't think their professional liability insurance would be able to cover the multitude of damages that would occur from an error in the code that could result. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Kinney? If not, okay, let's proceed on. Chris? Oh, Mr. Paul Lamb, excuse me. Did they register? Okay.
Aloha Chair and Council members, Chris Delaney, Pacific Resource Partnership. We're in strong support of Council Member Kia Aina's proposed CD2 to Bill 6. You know, I think this would be a good compromise to help alleviate some of the backlog at DPP. We heard from DPP that the low-hanging fruit would probably be the TI types of projects. Also, it has DHHL in there, and we're hoping to this will help to alleviate some of the backlog individuals who are currently on the waiting list for DHHL. We are opposed to adding Chapter 32 in there, those types of projects. These projects already have expedited building permit process, as you heard earlier, a 60-day for the building official to approve or disapprove. If not, it's deemed approved. Secondly, they're already getting direct and indirect financing from the counties. These are grants and waivers that they're getting, automatic waivers. Third, they don't need to go before the council to obtain benefits like waivers and exemptions, like other affordable housing projects like 201H projects have to go through that process. So they're getting a substantial amount of benefits to reduce the time to build these types of projects and approve them. So given that, thank you for this opportunity.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Delaney. Any further questions for Mr. Delaney? If there is none, okay, thank you. Mr. Paul Lam.
Chair Say, committee members, my name is Paul Lam. I've been honored to host most of you at our Bill 7 Affordable Housing Project on Ernest Street, which was completed on September 30th within 9 months, and we hope to have a certificate of occupancy by the end of this month. So I welcome Council members Cordero, Wire, to visit at your convenience. Let me begin by thanking the Council for voting 9-0 to extend Bill 7 through Bill 8. It's obvious you have a strong desire to increase the inventory for affordable housing. My team has broken ground on 2 Bill 7 projects on Ernest Street and Kenau Street, with several more in the pipeline. I'm here today in strong support of Bill 6, a self-certification ordinance that will accelerate the development of additional Bill 7 housing. For the past 2.5 years, we've been studying why Bill 7 hasn't scaled and resulted in more desperately needed for affordable housing. While there are issues that are beyond our control, such as rising construction costs and record interest rates, we can influence a critical component, permit approval, by accelerating the process with self-certification of qualified architects and engineers. This will help to increase the private equity investment and encouraging more landowners and investors to participate in Bill 7. If we hope to see sufficient affordable housing in our community, we must assure developers and investors that the 90-day timetable you approved in Bills 7 and 8 will be honored. In my opinion, in the near term, this will only be possible with Bill 6 self-certification. I support and applaud Director Apuna's courageous work to revamp and improve DPP. Increased funding of staff and modern technology will surely help, but it will take time to implement this huge undertaking, and the demand for affordable housing won't wait. The situation is dire with rising real estate prices. Without decisive action in the permitting process for affordable housing, the cost and pain will be too great for our society to bear. I urge your swift passage of Bill 6 with strong administrative rules and provisions that provide the DPP director with the ultimate discretion to protect public interest. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lam. Any questions for Mr. Lam at this point in time? If not, thank you. Ms. Kawanui Sabas? Oh.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. Kawanui Sabas here with HGEA. Just standing on a written testimony which provides comments. We would like to respectfully ask the committee to consider amending the sunset date to 2 years. We believe 2 years is a sufficient amount of time for DPP to invest in its current employees and to hire and train more employees to sustain the permitting demand. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Sabaz? Okay, let's proceed on. Madam Clerk, are there any further in-person testimony?
Yes, Chair.
Oh, okay. It's not here.
Hello, Chair Say, Vice Chair Dos Santos Tam, and members of the Zoning Committee. Thank you for bringing this measure up for continued public discussion. Testifying in support of the proposed CD2 introduced by Councilmember Kia Aina. This measure would allow commercial office and retail tenant improvements without building height requirements, will help to alleviate the building permit backlog, and is the only draft that specifically assists DHHL in fulfilling its mandate and does not include Chapter 32 projects. We feel this could be a mutually beneficial measure that allows commercial renovations quicker, helps DHHL while addressing DPP's permit backlog, allowing our residents to receive permits faster. Appreciate the opportunity to testify and available for any questions. Thank you.
Could you state your name for the record
I'm
and
sorry.
what organization?
Alan Texera from Avalon Development. Apologies, Chair.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Teixeira? Thank you very much. Okay, that's it. Are there any further in-person testifiers here? If there is none, let's proceed on. Members, we are now in discussion. Recognizing that we have 3 different proposals, the chair would like to recommend that if you folks agree, could we incorporate the chair's proposal, which incorporates your position in regards to DHHL? And for Councilwoman Tupola, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'll be supporting your version. Definitely appreciate you combining the efforts and thoughts of different perspectives. I guess my concern is still outstanding, not about this bill, but just about that it's written in law that Bill 7 has this expediting process of which was aforementioned, but no one follows it. So it's concerning to me because it's true. They do have a lot of benefit and they have a timeline. You yourself was the person who extended the timeline. So this isn't supposed to last forever. It was supposed to be a stimulus of home affordable housing into the economy. So I guess obviously I support this. I wish that really we could increase our manpower by doing emergency hires and then eventually getting all of our code review up to the amount of staff that the director is looking for, because we wouldn't be in this place of trying to amend and make all of these different things if we had more efficiency in the code review. So I just wanted to make mention of that I do think that we should consider that things that are written in law are not working. And when they don't work, making another law is very hopeful, but let's try to follow the laws and the admin rules, because people are counting on us as the government setting rules and being lawmakers to follow these things. So I want to continue to encourage the director. She has a monumental task that she's undertaking and we support her, but we definitely need to see strides of progress in permitting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Wire.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate all the work that went into the draft versions by both Chair and then also the committee members. I understand the need to speed up the permit process, but at the same time also maintain public safety and ensuring that all folks that self-certified are adequately licensed, insured and bonded. So my preference would be Vice Chair's CD, but of course, welcome, the chair's committee chair's guidance.
Okay. Councilmember Kiaina.
Hello, Chair. Again, I appreciate actually that your current CD1 narrows it from what was originally intended, but my concerns remain with regard to the self-certification process and the doors that it could open for liability purposes, et cetera. And so while I do believe that Bill 7 projects deserve what they were expected to get in the underlying ordinance, which is more expeditious consideration in the permitting process. I don't believe this is the solution. So I do not support your proposed, is it a CD2 or CD1?
CD2.
I oppose your CD2 and would prefer that the measure be narrowly tailored to community tenant improvements and DHL projects. At least for that, my problem is the self-certification process, by the way. It's not just the parameters of eligible projects. And as such, I'm willing to give this process a start with the low-hanging fruit that DPP also concurs with. I know that the director just mentioned community tenant improvement projects, but of course my amendment includes a DHL residential project. So that would be my preference. So again, I would be opposed to your proposed CD2 and would recommend passage of my proposed CD1.
Okay, your points, all of your points are very much
Or
well.
CD2, I'm sorry.
The chair recommended that he consider the CD2 of the chair, primarily because, does everyone understand the original Bill 7? What was the zoning for that Bill 7? Apartments, not residential, apartments, not homes. That's number one. Number two, I agreed with carving out DHHL. But at that point in time, they're already exempt from all of our zoning codes. So what makes you think it's going to facilitate the development? If our goal was to address the 22,000, that's why I'm saying to all of you, let's just consider the proposed draft that I have and see how far it goes. If you recall, was it this year or last year that we adopted the extension of Bill 7? This year. See? For 4 years. After 4 years, it's going to be mute until they come back and tell us how successful they were. So that's why I had incorporated Bill 7 as part of addressing the shortage of our homes that we have. But in this particular case, it's well taken that there is a question of health and safety in regards to 2-story, 3-story apartments that may not be amenable to what the Honolulu Fire Department requires. But in the end, we all have to decide if we want to control the cost of affordable housing. It's a tough issue for all of us, but the chair would like to recommend that we push it out to see how the full council will vote on this particular measure at this point in time. Okay, if you don't mind. So I did incorporate the HHL. You wanted to carve out Bill 7 projects, and I'm saying Bill 7 projects are for apartment zone projects, and it is good for just the next 4 years. So it's a trial. If it's not successful in 4 years, there's no need to address the issue already, and that's it. But to not try to do something as far as what was stated for the record, that a lot of these projects did not get off the ground when it was adopted in 2019 or 2017? I can't recall. Director, if you recall, you weren't here too. We weren't all here, but what? 2019. So it's been 4 years, and our success rate has been very, very poor. So all I'm saying, let's try it with self-certification with the Bill 7 ordinance that we have on the books. Okay? So at this point, I'm just going to call for the question. So if you want to vote no, you may vote no. So the chair then recommends that Bill 6, 2023 CD2 be reported out for passage on third reading, which is, chair says, oh, okay. The chair recommends that Bill 6, 2023 CD1 be amended to the posted CD2 that I submitted. Any discussion, objections by Councilmember Kia Aina, or reservations? Hearing none, the bill has been amended to the CD2. The chair then recommends that Bill 6 of 2023, CD2, be reported out for passage on third reading. Any discussion? Any objections? Chair Kiana is objections. Any reservations? Hearing none, so ordered. Okay, thank you very much. This goes to the full council. Moving on to agenda number 11, which will be discussion only. No action will be taken at this point in time. Bill 54 of 2023, this bill would temporarily allow for the modification of certain requirements in the Housing Code, ROH 16A-4.4, relating to the provisions of natural light and ventilation for multifamily dwellings to address the city's housing crisis by facilitating the adaptive reuse of commercial buildings as multifamily dwellings. Members, we have posted to the agenda a CD1 version of the bill. For your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. I introduced this bill as an alternative to Bill 21 of 2023, which would have provided an exemption from compliance with the Housing Code, natural light, and ventilation requirements. What? What?
Can you appoint Tupola so that Rainey can take a break? She needs to use the bathroom. So can you appoint Tupola as a temporary member? So that.
Oh, right, okay. At this point in time, Councilwoman Tupola, can I appoint you as a member of the zoning committee
Sure.
for now until Councilwoman Cordero returns? Okay. I'm sorry. I introduced this bill as an alternative to Bill 21 of 2023, which would have provided an exemption from compliance with the Housing Code, natural light, and ventilation requirements for multifamily dwellings. Bill 54, 2023 would allow for the modification for a 5-year period of the Housing Code, natural light, and ventilation requirements only for the adaptive reuse of commercial buildings as multifamily dwellings. This is intended to address the current office building high vacancy rate. Bill 54 of 2023 would not require every bedroom to have direct access to an openable window if certain requirements set forth in the bill are satisfied. These requirements are intended to address health and safety considerations. Note that the 201H projects proposing to develop affordable housing modifications to the Housing Code, natural light and ventilation requirements may be allowed under the 201H approval process. Similarly, under Bill 54, the conceptual plan for an adaptive reuse project that seeks to modify the Housing Code, natural light and ventilation requirements must be approved by the council.
Can you thank Tony Topa? He's allowed us to go into his committee meeting time.
No, we're gonna get through before 1. What?
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, I'm sorry. So, Director Apuna.
Hello, Chair. So, did you want me to comment on this bill?
This is a discussion,
Okay, thank you.
proposal that was, as a compromise as far as the original bill. And any thoughts you folks may have would be helpful.
Yes, I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. We think it's a good compromise. We do think, though, that it shouldn't have to come back to the council. It should be a ministerial permit that if the applicant meets the specific technical requirements, like a building permit, it should just be approved that way rather than having to come to the council. I don't know what additional discretion is needed by the council or even the director as it specifies in here. So we would suggest taking out the need to come to council or to have additional discretion by the director. Also, I think it's temporary and it applies only to currently commercial use properties, but we want to make sure it's not in here now, but that it doesn't allow for this type of adaptive reuse, well, not adaptive reuse, but this allowing mechanical light ventilation for new buildings. Like this should only be for existing buildings that need to be converted for affordable housing or other more useful uses. Other than that, I think it's, like I said, a good progress. There might be a few tweaks that we would like to work out, but again, if it would be a ministerial permit, that would be much more preferred. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. Managing Director Formby, would you like to say a few words also in regards to Bill 54? No? Okay. Any questions for the director? If not, members, can we proceed on to the remote testimony? Madam Clerk? Okay, well, we have, Alan is here in person. Dan Curran? Okay. I thought, no, wait. We're going remote testimony first.
Okay, she said there's none.
Okay. There is none as far as remote testimony. We'll go on to the in-person testimony. Mr. Curran, please.
Hi, Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for this time. My name is Dan Curran. I've got a contractor's license and a mechanical engineering degree. I just wanted to talk a few points on the bill. I do work for Avalon Development, but I'm testifying as an individual. You have a 600 square foot limit on. It says that if you go over 600 square feet, you need 2 openable windows in 2 separate habitable spaces. That doesn't really work because the way that these buildings generally lay out is you have your living room and kitchen combined at the window. And so 600 square feet's not that big. Once you go over that, you would end up having to put the bedroom onto the window, which kind of defeats the purpose of it. So that limit really kind of hurts. You know, two openable windows would be fine, but it's 2 on 2 different habitable spaces is kind of hard to do. Secondly, as the director said, we think that there's just too many times coming back to the council and all that kind of stuff puts a lot of ambiguity there in the whole process. So we think that, you know, as long as there's a good set of rules laid out, that's what should be followed. And, you know, the International Building Code has those rules already laid out. A lot of smart people went through that and have gone, you know, come up with those rules. So we think that that's what should be followed. And then one thing I've heard some talk about having the ventilation system on emergency power. The thing you got to be careful about that is you don't want it to transfer right away because potentially, usually it's maybe a fire is the reason why, you know, the electricity's gone out, and you don't want to pump a bunch of air into the building if you've got a fire in the building. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Curran. Mr. Kinney, we have you down for reuse of commercial buildings.
Nathaniel Kinney, Hawaii Regional Council of Carpenters. I think we're all struggling to find the best pathway on adaptive reuse. I admire the committee's efforts to put forth something that could possibly work. I think just it needs time with stakeholders to discuss, and if we could kind of like go back and forth on what would be the best course of action, especially when it regards to operable windows. I mean, the council discretion, I think that the DPP brought up does lengthen the process, but at the same time, I think really at the end of the day, you know, other jurisdictions, New York, San Francisco, are all struggling with how to, you know, take an office building and make it into residential. But again, applaud the committee's efforts, and if we could just kind of kick this one around a lot more and come out with something workable, that's what we'd be in favor of. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Evan Oy.
Aloha Chair, members of the committee, Evan Oy on behalf of NIAP Hawaii. We respectfully stand in opposition to the current version of the bill. We do appreciate the committee's work that they've done so far. Primarily, our concern is with that this alters, the current process from a non-discretionary permit into a discretionary process, which would look to extend the time frame for these projects, and that'll prohibit lenders from providing capital to until this discretionary permit is received, and two, eliminate one of adaptive reuse's main benefits, which is actually an abbreviated timeline to bring housing units online. And then secondly, the current draft doesn't really provide the necessary flexibility in regards to mechanical ventilation, as it appears, it does require operable windows, which, in turn, many of these commercial buildings don't currently have those, and it would substantially increase costs, which may not make the projects viable. So, we do stand in opposition, but are open to working with, the committee on a resolution to have adaptive reuse projects move forward. So thank you for the time available for any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Alan Teixeira.
Hello, Chair Say, members of the committee, Alan Teixeira from Avalon Development. I wanted to thank the chair for introducing this bill and bringing it up for discussion. We are standing on a written testimony offering comments. We appreciate the intent of this measure. However, we have concerns that as it's currently written, it may deter adaptive reuse projects. We believe the process to receive these exemptions is lengthy, and any delays add significant costs to our project. We currently have two codes on the books, the IBC and our own housing code. We are simply seeking to use light and ventilation requirements from the IBC instead of the Honolulu housing code for these very specific projects. We're not building anything new, and this will not affect the entire county. This is like the housing low-hanging fruit. We are taking a declining sector, commercial occupancy, and converting it to new housing. We agree with DPP that this should remain a ministerial permit, and we look forward to working with the council and other stakeholders on improving this bill. This is a great opportunity to revitalize the downtown area and provide new housing for our residents during this crisis. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Teixeira.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Chris?
Aloha Chair and Council members, Chris Delaney, Pacific Resource Partnership. We submitted our written testimony requesting that the council or this committee hold and discuss further with stakeholders. We think this adaptive reuse is an excellent opportunity to repurpose vacant office space into much needed housing. And so we want to make sure that we get this right. We want to make sure that we incentivize developers to build these types of projects and not discourage them. And thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Okay, any questions for Chris? I should have asked all of you testifiers, do you have other proposals in mind that we could have a discussion later on? I'm just trying to figure out a way of how we can try to address this issue. If mechanization is the answer for our ventilation and sunlight, I don't believe it's addressing our affordable housing costs or our affordable housing target group. If it's for market, just be upfront and tell all of us it's going to be for the market, because the cost is going to be horrendous. You're correct. And that's where we had our first meeting and we talked about it, right? So, for Nate and Chris and Evan, you folks are the young ones. What the future holds as far as what you like to see as far as readapting commercial buildings that will not be in operation, and you're correct. But that's where I needed the input from you folks. This is the discussion you folks are having publicly and openly. So if you don't mind, Vice Chair, would you like, no, please say a few words about what you would like to see because we're changing the behavior of human beings too.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity. As you know, I introduced Bill 21, which would have totally exempted this requirement and simply subjected these projects to the existing IBC. I recognize that that was a very, perhaps a far-reaching step, and I think that there is room for some reasonable compromise here. I think the challenge is, as Bill 54 is currently written, it takes what is a discretionary, or it takes a ministerial process within DPP and makes it a discretionary permit that has to come to us as it's written right now. If we don't take action, a proposal would be denied. And earlier on this agenda, we had, I think, 4 items that we had to extend the time for. We had several SMA items that came before us for minor things, manini things. Not that, you know, protection of EV kupuna and all those other things are important, but, you know, it's a single family home. It was a tennis court. But they have to come before us. And what I don't want to see for this process is if there's a project that's an existing commercial building that's been built, that's been occupied for decades, there are no health and safety issues, that simply, if the only thing standing in the way is the fact that when they built this building in the 1970s, the windows were flush to the building, I don't want to see them have to tear down every single window and replace it at very high cost. And so I think those are my concerns, is that we're taking what's now not a discretionary process and making it discretionary, subjecting all these folks to have to come down to the council with their very expensive consultants and architects and engineers and everyone else. And, you know, DPP, which is already backlogged, having to come up with this report, come up with evaluations, come to council, defend that, it seems very cumbersome. And so the lens that I'd be looking at through this is, you know, does this make the process easier than what it is right now? Because if the process is that, you know, all you have to do right now is go to DPP, you know, then so be it. But I want to have a very clear process that people can follow. To Alan's point that he just brought up, we want a clear process so that, or maybe it was Evan, that the investors who are financing this project have some certainty that it will be approved, that we will have housing. So that's the lens that I'm looking for, a clear process, one that's going to facilitate the redevelopment of these empty commercial buildings into residential, which is so desperately needed in downtown. And I think that we probably do need a lot more time to work on some of these changes. Separate from the windows and ventilation issue, there are some parking and other kind of obstacles that are also redevelopment type things that probably need to be worked on as a larger picture kind of downtown / commercial redevelopment issue. But anyway, those are my thoughts on this. But as it stands right now, you know, respectfully, I wouldn't support Bill 54 as it currently stands.
Oh, thank you very much for your insights on this. Director Apuna, just a question. I did go and visit the 4th Street Mall. I did go and visit the residency. Was that ministerial, or was that a change from business to residential? And did they come before the council?
I mean, I think it's a 201H
Oh,
project.
that's a 201H
Yeah.
now. Oh, okay, that's affordable housing. This particular measure is dealing with market. Or is it going to be affordable? I don't know. That's what I'm asking. This is the type of questions I need to hear from you folks, the answers. If it's going to be market, because we're putting in these provisions that you have to have windows, tell us. I don't know, but I'm wanting to learn. It's just that this is a compromise that I'm asking the testifiers, do you folks have other ideas and alternatives to it, rather than the committee got to do the heavy lifting? I'm sorry, Director. Just
Yeah, I mean, it's a good start. I think this is one part of the puzzle for adaptive reuse. And so internally, we're looking at other ways that we can, you know, make it easier for adaptive reuse in the downtown, Chinatown area. So we'll bring that to you if it will be helpful and can be added in or explored.
so one thought, Vice Chair DeSantos, since you're the sponsor of the measure, we don't need this measure then. We don't need anything because if it's done ministerially, they can do it already.
I think the challenge is that while there is a process internally, it's the criteria by which DPP would evaluate whether someone should get this kind of exemption is a little bit unclear. And so we want to have a clear process. You check this box, you check this box, you check this box, and you'll get the exemption. I think that helps the developers be able to plan, because if the process is full of hoops that they got to jump through, that adds to their cost. I think another question, if I may ask the DPP director, for many of these downtown buildings that are planned to be redeveloped, they already have like a mechanical ventilation system. They already have a central AC that serves the offices, right?
Yes.
So revamping that to serve future residential units wouldn't be a huge expense compared to, in sort of a new example, if you're building a new building, having to put in a whole brand new mechanical ventilation system versus just windows, right?
Well, I think it depends. It depends on what the current, building is. It can be extraordinarily expensive to revamp by reconfiguring the units for residential. So it just depends. And I think we're looking at that adaptive reuse can be very expensive. So if there's ways that we can cut costs but yet ensure life safety, that's what we're trying to do. We're looking at the inventory of what's out there. We have I think 13% office vacancy rate in the downtown Chinatown areas, and not every building that's currently vacant is ideal for adaptive reuse. So it is kind of case by case.
I guess what I'm getting at is, if we're solely focused on adaptive reuse of commercial buildings, I think that the question of the added cost of a new, entirely new mechanical ventilation system kind of goes by the wayside versus building something from the ground up, where that clearly is a huge engineering undertaking.
I don't know. I think there's people that might disagree. It depends. It does. I mean, if you have raw land and can build it, it might be cheaper than it just depends what we have out there. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Director Apuna. Thank you very much, Vice Chair. We have another testifier, Ms. Christine Camp. Please, Christine.
Thank you, Council Chair Say, and members of the committee. I commend you for even trying to do something about adaptive reuse. While vacancy is 13%, it's climbing. And if you look at downtown, it's not the downtown you saw, before the pandemic. Things are really, really shifting, and it's shifting fast. So we do need to do something. So we commend you for at least looking at it and introducing the idea and having the conversations. I think that when Bill 21 was first introduced, it was very ambitious. It caught everyone by surprise because it was trying to do adaptive reuse and new construction. So we get it. So I think what we're asking for is a specific thing that has some certainty for adaptive reuse. And like DPP director said, adaptive reuse doesn't necessarily mean it's less expensive. In fact, we're finding that it's just as expensive. But it's really about speed. How fast can you build? You don't have to dig anything, so you don't have to worry about EV Kapuna. You don't have to worry about civil engineering issues. It's really about just building within the footprint. And that's what we're trying to get. And by having this bill right now, it kind of negates all of that speed. And we'd like you to introduce that idea that, let's look at this speed and let's look at this opportunity. And having the time limit is just fine, because there's not a lot of, downtown Honolulu right now, right? We're looking at the Honolulu area. Downtown Honolulu is, there's a finite amount of existing buildings that could convert. But there may be other areas like Kapiolani Corridor or other areas that may need this adaptive reuse areas. And because people are just not going to the offices, even retail, with the advent of what's going on with Amazon and what have you. So what we ask is for additional dialogue. If you could look at Bill 21, it had a lot of the components that we needed, except we do agree that it should be for existing buildings only. Thank you so much.
Nope, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Kemp? No questions? Okay. At this point in time, members, we are in discussion. If there is no discussion, there being no further business, the meeting is adjourned.